Hello, how are you? Everything's good.
Look at my list here because I didn't see his name, but I also watched it. I don't know what year I was. I'm sorry. I think he's got. There were people getting this. Outside the scope of what staff is supposed to do.
Good evening. Can we please rise for the prayer? Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Can we please salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk, please call the roll.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Martin.
Here.
Counsel Mercia.
Here.
Counsel Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke.
Here.
Counsel Samaras.
Here.
Counsel Belanger.
Here.
Mayor Elliott.
Here.
Counsel Kennedy.
Here.
9 present.
I'm present. First item on the agenda is a proclamation to Lowell Women's Week Committee in recognition of Lowell Women's Week. Could you please come to the podium, please? Council Mercy and I had the distinguished honor and pleasure of joining a breakfast celebration yesterday, kicking off Women's Week. We want to thank you. It was a wonderful event, and we thank you for coming and joining us tonight. So on behalf of the City of Lowell, we'd like to offer the proclamation. City of Lowell, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, by myself, Rodney M. Elliott, the Mayor of the City of Lowell, on behalf of all my colleagues in government. Whereas in 1987, by a joint resolution of Congress, the month of March was dedicated as Women's History Month, and each year this celebration is carried on throughout the United States. Our community, through Lowell Women's Week, has celebrated the influence, power, and talent of the women whose contributions built this community, those currently guiding the city, and those who will bring it to the future. And whereas this year's theme is redefining wellness, ourselves, our communities, our world, the City of Lowell specially recognizes those women being honored by Lowell's Women Week with a Because of Her award for having gone above and beyond in service and enriching their community. And whereas this year, once again, many organizations in the area have planned programs, events, and exhibits to celebrate women and address their interests and concerns. And the City of Lowell recognizes their contributions to the success of Lowell's Women Week. Now, therefore, I, Rodney M. Elliott, Mayor of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim March 2nd through the 8th, 2014, as Lowell Women's Week in the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, and we urge all citizens to join in the celebration. Given this 4th day of March 2014, by myself, Rodney M. Elliott, on behalf of all of my colleagues in government, we thank you and congratulations.
Lowell Women's Week is now in our 19th year. I can't imagine that, 19 years. It's a citywide collaboration of all these wonderful women who get together each year and provide programming free to the public. So we have an array of programs that we're offering all week long, and actually all month long, for women to come out into the city and join forces, meet other women, and collaborate on some wonderful ideas that they're doing in the city, and actually just enjoy themselves. I want to thank you very much for acknowledging us, and have a chance to actually publicize Lowell Women's Week. If anyone is interested in any of our programs, we have a great website, www.lowellwomensweek.org, and we have lots of programs for everyone involved. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, under the city clerk's portion of the agenda, the minutes of the city council meeting, February 25th. Minutes from the zoning subcommittee meeting, February 25th as well, for acceptance. Motion by Councilor Samaras, seconded by Councilor O'Rourke, to accept and place on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item under unfinished business, Councilor Belanger.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'd like to make a motion to postpone unfinished business 3.4, executive session to discuss release minutes of executive sessions dating January 21st, 2014, until next Tuesday's meeting.
Okay, we'll skip over the motions. Motion by Councilor Belanger to postpone item 3-4 and 3-5 to executive sessions, seconded by Councilor O'Rourke, to the next meeting of the City Council. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. I just had a question about that, though. Is there anything pertinent that the manager has to say to us you won't be here next week, so
Mr. Manager?
is the information passed on to?
I think the city solicitor can handle all
Okay.
of that report.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion on the motion, Councilor O'Rourke?
Mr. Mayor, just one question. Are we better off doing it before next week's meeting, or afterwards? I guess it'll be up to the council.
Is there a subcommittee scheduled for next Tuesday? Mr. Clerk?
There is, yes.
What is the wish of the body? To just schedule it for following all business to the next council meeting? Council,
That's the motion, yes.
right. Not before. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 3 items under unfinished business. Council Leahy, I will be brief, but I should come down from the podium.
Chair recognizes Mayor Elliott. Let's see. Item 3.1, motion by Mayor Elliott. Requests City Council discuss setting up a joint ad hoc subcommittee with the City Council School Committee to initiate discussion of high school and facility assessment report. Seconded by Councilor O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I did file this motion. I know there are facility subcommittees on both sides of the school committee and the city council, so there have been some preliminary there's been some discussion certainly on the school committee side and this past term, and I know it clearly has been an issue both in the last campaign and moving forward. So I thought it was important to at least have a discussion and see if there is an assessment report that was forwarded to us last term as well. So I think it's important for the new members to get a copy of that assessment report, both in the high school as well as other municipal facilities on the school side. So knowing that there should be a discussion, I think one of the best ways to do it is to set up an ad hoc subcommittee of either both current subcommittees on facilities, municipal facilities, and move in that direction. So that's the intent of it. At least initiate a discussion on high school and other schools, knowing that a report is out there, and so this is a way to just move that forward.
Thank you. Any further, Council Rourke?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Anytime where the city council and the school committee can work together, I'll be all in favor for, so I would gladly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Council Belanger?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I think it's a great motion. I do like to see that like Council Rourke stated, the council and the school committee going to join forces on this. It involves both parties, very, very in-depth for both bodies of government. So I do support it because this conversation regarding the high school needs to begin sooner rather than later. Whatever the determination may be, the census, from what I gather, is we are in need of a new high school. So that, to get a finished product, you're talking 7, 8, 10 years before you have a finished product. So the conversation needs to begin right away. So I do support it, and I anxiously await future dialogues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next motion by Mayor Elliott. Request City Council discuss making Galligan Road one-way street. Seconded by Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. This motion speaks for itself. This is a road that runs, it's up in the Highlands, and it runs between Wilder and Stevens, and it was next to Lowell Catholic, and as a result of the increase in enrollment, there are more cars, and with the snow, there were some parking issues, so I got a number of calls from residents, and if we could at least look at making it a one-way, Mr. Manager, I know that DPW did go up, they did remove the snow, because people literally could not go down the street, and a number of neighbors support this, so if we could take a look at it and see what the traffic engineer says about this, and the neighbors would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next motion by Mayor Elliott. Request City Council discuss public participation process for the location of the recycling center. Seconded by Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Again, this is from a couple of weeks ago, but in light of a couple of locations that have been identified and not seemingly suitable for a recycling center, I thought it was important that we initiate a process, and I don't know how many sites are being considered. I think we should know that one of the criteria is that it's a city piece of property and city-owned property. So I do think it's important that we have a discussion, a public discussion on those particular sites that are considered, and perhaps I could amend my own motion to send this to the neighborhood subcommittee for a discussion on these proposed locations and come up with something that everybody would be happy with. Thank you.
Council Belanger.
Yes, through you, Mr. Vice Chair, to the manager. Mr. Manager, with all due respect, I greatly appreciate what you're doing. My conversations with DPW officials, recycling is picked up dramatically, and we need to keep it going, and that's all great. So I understand the need for future sites. That's very understandable. But my question to you is, shouldn't these things need land use board approvals, planning or zoning board approval as they go into the neighborhoods? Because we all saw what happened there at the Bagshaw Mills. We cannot just place dumpsters, even though it's city property. There's still neighborhoods. As much as we'd like, we can't just put dumpsters on lots that we own without, we're foolish to sit here and think we're not going to have feedback from the neighborhood. I think we all realize that. So my question is to you, should these not require zoning approval where there's public hearings and abutters are notified? Is that an option?
Well, I think that the city uses of property is exempt from the zoning, so you wouldn't want to get that into that type of review process. I think the mayor's suggestion is basically what we'd like to see happen, to have the DPW and DPD work on a number of different sites and bring those to the council and have a discussion of all of those, and then let the public participate in that process rather than go through the formal zoning process. That ends into an area that generally we don't to go, which is because there is an exemption under the current zoning ordinance for city use of property.
Okay, I recall seeing one or two throughout the years. Mount Vernon Street, a city-owned, city-acquired piece of property was in front of the ZBA for artists, musical artists use stuff. So I do recall seeing one piece city-owned that was in front of the board during my time.
I'd have to go
Okay,
back and look.
but I guess the objective here is to have input from the neighborhood. That's my objective. So we don't need to go through the whole process, that's fine too. Just as long as the butters are notified, they have input on this, it will be satisfactory to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Does the motion as amended need a second? I'd be happy to second that.
Sure. Seconded by Council Milonazo. Sure, Mayor Elliott.
Just one question. Mr. Manager, has the old landfill ever been considered for a potential site for this type of center? I mean, I know there's one at DPW, but it just seems, is that being considered?
I think it's been considered. There are several different issues, though. One is using it for the public to just come up, and because it's a capped landfill, that causes some problems for DEP in all likelihood. And the other is space up there is very tight. You know, it's all regulated what we do up there with salt and other materials. But then with the solar farm up there. And then lastly, it's right on the outskirts of the city. And so that, you know, I think we were looking for something that was a little more central for everyone in the city. So we're trying to achieve a lot of different things here. But DPD is doing some work with DPD and locating a number of different possible sites, and hopefully something can be reached. But clearly, the public has to be involved in this process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Solicitor?
Thank you. Just a quick point of clarification. The property that was referenced as having gone through that process was property actually that was going to a third party. So it was in the process, it was part of a settlement agreement, and it was being transferred to a third party, and it was their use that was actually being brought before the board, just as a point of clarification.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Mayor?
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is communications from the city manager. Motion responses. Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say through you to the city manager, thank you for the responses and all the work that was done for the snow removal on Roper Street and the explanation about the proposal for the Mill number 5 building, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, with regards to the ambulance contract, those concerns by the fire chief, have those been addressed for tomorrow evening or for Wednesday, Thursday evening?
Yes, I think the issue of response times is, I think there was a good article in the paper yesterday that showed that, in fact, they've been exceeding the standard on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just on item 4-1, motion responses on snow removal parking issues. Motion responses B, C. Any questions on those particular motions? Councilor Kennedy?
Through you to the manager, Mr. Manager, D, 41D.
Right.
The garages, that report, I think, said that if, over a 7-year period, the cost would be 6.7 million.
Correct.
And are there other garages too that have to be, that are not included in that?
Mr. Troop?
Due to the current conditions of the 5 garages, we selected the 2 knowing that it was going to be a high-ticket repair to address the major issues. So we identified 2 that we thought were priorities, and the report includes some budget numbers to address that we could extrapolate to address the other garages in the city. So we can use maybe our yearly budget to address them over the same period, and we wouldn't have to draw off of our regular budget.
Okay, thanks. And I guess in the budget proposal that you have later on in the agenda this evening, is that included?
That is not included. That's the type of project that I think that I felt it was important to have it presented tonight, being my last night, meeting with the council, that it would be on your radar screen. Something that generally the bond issues for the utilities are taken up separately outside the capital budget.
Yep.
So that can be something that a little bit down the road, the new manager and the finance people can look at that. I actually think the best thing to do might be to go in and, there's a couple different ways you could do this. One is you could just bond the entire amount and phase it out over a period of time. The other is you could, but get it done all at once, you know. But the other is you could just sort of chop away at it over time. I'll leave that up to the finance people and the new finance people and new manager to come up with that.
Okay, thanks.
Council Leahy on motions A through D.
Yes, just one quick question. Is there a subcommittee meeting set up with the economic development yet? Did we post that for the discussion of the parking ordinance?
There was an economic development subcommittee meeting set up for the night that, at the big snowstorm. So, Council Belanger, I know you've been looking to reschedule it.
It's been rescheduled to the 18th, Mr. Mayor, 5:30.
Thank you.
Further discussion on these responses to the motions? Motion by Council Belanger, seconded by Councilor Kennedy, to accept and place on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4-2, communication from the city manager and the ambulance contract. Council Rourke, all set? Question was asked and answered. Council Kennedy?
Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager, on the ambulance contract, is this communication in response to my motion?
Yes, it should be listed as a response to your motion.
Okay, and so my motion had two parts, and so one part was to provide a rationale of why we didn't do an RFP? And you think that the idea that we don't have to is the rationale for not doing it?
No, I think that the rationale to that is that it's the, Trinity is the longstanding provider. There's a high level of satisfaction with their service, that the basis of bidding something out is generally to see if you can improve the service or to get more money. Money is regulated by the Medicaid laws, Medicare laws, and therefore the money is the money. You can't change that. So then it comes down to quality of service, and there is a high level of satisfaction with Trinity by the Board of Health, and they felt that sticking with that, where they're really the only provider in the city that has the necessary equipment, systems, and experience, particularly with emergency 911 type of calls, that it made more sense to discuss contract amendments with them and see if something could be reached to address various concerns that they had regarding cell block assistance, medical assistance, as well as improved response times and issues such as that. And that made more sense than going through a formal process that would then result in the same conclusion.
Okay. And then the second part had to do with the concerns that the police chief, the fire chief mentioned in his communication. And I guess, at least from reading in the paper today, that some of those concerns were addressed. And I guess the response time that the fire chief was somewhat concerned about is actually pretty good.
Yes.
Right? And what about the rest of his concerns? Are they...
One of the issues that he suggested, and not so much concerns as suggestions, is increasing the number of ambulances dedicated to the city. That would by all accounts, not only Trinity, but also other providers that have commented on it, would make it prohibitive, and they wouldn't be able to bid on the ambulance contract. To have dedicated 5 ambulances, I think was the suggestion. That would be problematic. Another concern of the chief was getting the information on the specific medical cases that were, and that gets into some HIPAA issues.
Okay. And so is the Board of Health still collecting, or still tuning up the contract? Is that
That's my
a
understanding.
good way to characterize it? And do you have any idea of when that will be, when they'll conclude?
It could be tomorrow night. It could be extended once again for further information. But I know they're taking it up tomorrow night.
Okay, thanks.
Council Roth and Council Belanger.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager. Mr. Mayor, with regards to the advanced life support and basic life support section of the contract, is that going to stay the same as it has always been?
That's my understanding. The Board of Health, I know, has been considering, and I've certainly had brought to my desk the possibility of splitting it. I think the Board of Health's position and mine has been that it makes more sense to have it all under one vendor, that they then can, we dispatch them, they send the BLS, they determine whether ALS is needed, and then they can dispatch from there, as opposed to having, and they can be ultimately responsible for that ALS response to ensure that it's timely. Whereas otherwise, you'd have to have the city sending BLS and then the call coming back that you need ALS and then having it sent off again for another dispatch to ALS, and it may not necessarily be in close proximity.
So the contract provider is responsible for ALS services?
Yes. Yep. And they can have a backup with another provider that can assist them on that. Yes.
All set, Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. With this issue has arisen, and talking to many independent people, citizens, people who are involved in healthcare, Mr. Manager, and it's been this way long before you got here, but it makes no sense to me why this is in the hands of the health department. Now, would not the fire department be better suited to make this decision? I know the ordinance states the health department.
Right.
But in my opinion, the fire department will be far better suited here to make this decision. They would know response times firsthand. They work hand in hand together. These emergency services that work hand in hand together. In my opinion, it would be best suited in the hands of the fire department, and a decision that might, in the future, I mean, there's nothing we can do about tomorrow night, so it's not what this is about. But, and I think it's something this council should look at for 3 years from now about changing the ordinance, quite frankly. But, Mr. Manager, could you just give, this council and the folks at home a little history lesson here, to your knowledge? How is this in the hands of the, I'm not calling them incapable by any means, stretch of the imagination, but I'm just saying it's, they work hand in hand with the fire department. They would seem to be better suited and knowledgeable in this decision.
Well, Counselor, I think you could go 3 different ways. You could have it be the fire department is one possibility. You could have the police department, because the police department is actually the one that does the dispatch. You could have, and oftentimes the first one on the scene. You could have the health, because they have the doctors on the board and they have the medical experience to know what type of services are necessary. So I think it really involves all of those. But my understanding is in 1988, the ordinance was written to give this oversight to the health department. And I think since that time, it has served the city well. I think the city has had a good track record with its ambulance provider since that time.
Yes, I agree. That's not the issue. It's just that,
Right.
and thank you. You really reiterated my point that, maybe police should be involved too, maybe jointly a decision between the two. But I think they, it should be in their hands, in my opinion. I'm only one vote, and we're not going to find a solution here tonight, but to my colleagues, I just want to convey to them that this perhaps should be looked at in the future, 3 years from now. That's all. Thank you very much.
Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since we're going to be voting to accept this as a communication and place on file, I just want to state that last Tuesday I did file a public disclosure with the city clerk that I have a working relationship with Mr. Chemley, one of the owners of Trinity Ambulance. So I just wanted my colleagues and the public to know that at the credit union where I'm employed, Mr. Chemley's on the board of directors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Further discussion? Counselor Lee, could you take the chair?
Mayor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I wanted to address this communication as well, Mr. Manager, on the ambulance contract. As last week, I did express my feelings that the Board of Health was, trying to finalize this contract prior to your departure. I didn't think it looked good then, and especially considering there's no RFP process. And after reading and hearing about the Board of Health meeting last week, I want to express I'm even more concerned about the process and the timing than I originally was, especially when I see the Board of Health Director warn the board that time is running out. I feel that's very improper. The board should not be urging, the health director should not be urging the board to act quickly. It's not good government, and it's certainly not professional government. So the health director's comments prove the point that this process is being rushed, and it shouldn't be. They should be taking as much time as they can to address the issues that have been raised. The board and the health director, they should feel no pressure to rush this through so it can be signed off. Trinity's contract does not expire until June. I would also presume that they could go on a month-to-month type of contract in the event that all of the issues weren't settled and addressed. So I was encouraged to read that the board is looking at all the important issues raised by the fire chief and others. One of those issues is a service plan that I plan to address later this evening, and I hope the board continues to scrutinize the contract and make sure that the process is being done in a thorough manner, and they're not feeling pressure to move this forward. So thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, I guess I feel as if, I think that the health director's comments at the meeting last week probably were, maybe they were a little bit unfortunate. I suspect that you probably thought that as well.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't at the meeting, Council, so I don't know what, I just, it was in the paper, and
right.
I've seen the paper be wrong before.
Yes. However, I feel like the board itself is not feeling rushed and
Exactly.
is not feeling pressure from the health director or from the administration.
Correct.
And I think that they're acting in a diligent manner and in a very thoughtful way, and that they will take their time. And there is plenty of time on this one. If it doesn't happen by noontime, March 10th, that really doesn't matter. I mean, we're pretty far along through this process, and I think everybody's accepts that we're going to continue on with Trinity, and I just think that the board itself should be given a lot of credit for the work that they've done and the way they're going about it. I think that they've been, I think so far that they should be commended for the way they've done it and the way they've pushed back a little bit with the health director on any pressure that he may have tried to impose.
Mr. Manager?
Councilor, I agree completely, and I think the Board of Health is doing a very good job with this. They've, when I contacted them back in December just to ask them to, let me know how they wanted to proceed, they went about it in a very deliberate way. So I couldn't agree more.
Councilor Samaras?
To the city manager, basically, though, you would say the board has addressed many of the issues that have been brought up from the police department and fire department. So do you have any questions at this point on your mind that they haven't been?
No, I think that they've, they asked for that input. They received that input. They've had several meetings now regarding this matter. I think it's been a very open process. You know, it's interesting, other communities have done similar things and done it basically just administratively, but where we have the Board of Health, and to Councilor Belanger's point about having the Board of Health involved with this, by having a board that's actually involved in this, it makes it very much a public process. If it were just done by the police or fire or manager, it would just be done administratively. By having the Board of Health involved with it, there are public participation elements to this that wouldn't otherwise exist.
Another question. Regarding that board, is it mandatory that the police and fire report to that board as to their concerns, or is it just a process, I mean, as need process, or should it be a real process? In other words, that the board would be, I mean, because they have the charter to do this, but is it actually in writing that the police department and fire department should have access and make statements as to their needs?
No, it's not required, but the Board of Health did ask for that.
Okay.
They made the proactive decision to seek that information.
All right, that's important. So maybe down the road, you'd see a change that would be made that would mandate that the police department and fire department react to this contract when it comes
Conceivably,
up
yes.
again.
Absolutely.
Okay, but it has been addressed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, so, motion to accept, place on file, by Mayor, Councilor Milonazo, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Mayor?
Next item on the agenda is under communications. Communication to accept the resignation of Donna McIntosh from the Immigration Commission. Motion to accept and place on file by Councilor O'Rourke, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. All those in favor signify by saying aye. In the opposed, motion carries. Next item is a communication from the city manager, out-of-state travel, from one out-of-state travel for the Lowell Police Department.
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Martin. Roll call.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Next item, 4-5, it's a communication from the city manager on the draft budget. There is a presentation. Mr. Manager?
Sure. We need that. If I could have Mr. Baldwin hand out the budget. Mr. Marchand, turn on the TVs. And then I need these handed out too, one for each. I have all sorts of paper for you tonight. That's separate, that's separate, okay? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As promised, when I announced my resignation nearly 60 days ago today, I indicated that I would work to get a budget document to you in some form. I wasn't sure exactly how far along we could get in doing this, but I'm happy to report that we have a real budget document to give you tonight. And then we have some other paperwork associated with an issue that will be coming to you next week that I want to touch upon while I go through the budget tonight. And this can be a starting point for the council and the acting manager and then the permanent manager when he or she is appointed. So if I may, though, I'll let Mr. Marchand complete the distribution of these votes for next week that we will touch upon during the presentation today. And I knew that down deep, you wanted me to do one more PowerPoint presentation before I left. So this will be my last PowerPoint presentation to the Lowell City Council. So the history books can write this down. All right. So this just outlines the budget process. You've seen this type of timeline before. The difference being that we sped things up a little bit so that I'd have more information from the department heads to put the budget together. As you can tell, this isn't the usual budget document that the administration has been putting out the last several years that's filled with data and information and some good charts and graphs that sort of help people, the citizens and the counselors and others know all the information. But it does give you all the numbers that you need to know. And it has the March 4th date of my presenting the recommendation to the council. And I have to say at this point that this compilation of information, which was very much fast-tracked, would not be possible if it hadn't been for the initial legwork that Mr. Moses did before he left, but also the tremendous work that Connor Baldwin, our stat director, and Rodney Conley, a junior analyst, data analyst, have done over the last several weeks, working to pull this together and working with me on this. And that included nights and weekends and everything in between. And also I want to thank, even though she's not here tonight, Cheryl Wright, who was very helpful to this as well. In fact, was in here as late as, even though she left on Friday, she was in here as late as about 4 o'clock today, helping pull together some of the numbers for this. So it really has been a lot of people that have helped make this happen. But it lays out that basically we're still waiting at this point for the House budget and the Senate budget, and then at some point in May or June, the manager, whether it be the acting manager or the new manager, will need to review this and work on the budget, because it is based on certain assumptions that may change, at which time it can then be presented to the City Council in early June. The budget that we'll give you, all the budget departments have submitted their budget requests. We have put together a balanced budget. The bottom line is 0, so it is balanced, and it's presented including recommended adjustments. So we have the requests from the departments, and then we have the manager recommendation that would become the proposed budget if I were here to present a budget to you, if I had to present a budget to you tonight. What I've called for is a level service budget. Now that means that we're just doing basically what we have done this past year. We are not adding any services. We've had a number of requests for service expansion. We have not done that. Even with that, we have you will see it's dependent upon a 3.5% tax increase, and I'll obviously spend a little bit of time talking about that when we go through this in a little bit more detail. It does have an increase in direct contribution to the Lowell Public Schools that is necessary in order to maintain our meeting net school spending, the minimum net school spending. And I will say right at the outset, when you ask, well, how do we get a level service budget and we have to go up 3.5%? One of the biggest issues that we're facing is the charter schools. As you will see, that continues to be a challenge, and it's an area that we really need the state government to take a step up and take some action. We've made this point before that we're required to meet the net school spending requirement, but somehow the state does not necessarily have to meet their obligations under the charter school formula. So we need the delegation, we need the governor to really step up on that, and hopefully that will happen. In terms of revenue, we always use these pie charts to give you some sense of where the city gets its money. The largest share of our money comes from Chapter 70 money from the state for education, over 42%. The next largest category is the prior tax levy, which represents just almost 35%. We are anticipating new growth of, I think, about $1.8 million. It's in the budget document. And we're also expecting to increase our levy by 3.5%, which is a little bit above what I normally would propose. But given the fact that we haven't increased the levy over the last few years, it is necessary this year to do a bit of catch-up. In terms of other categories, we have general aid and local receipts, both at a little over 8%, and then some other revenues that are included within the overall formula. In terms of local aid, the governor's budget was released in January 22nd. The governor, despite the increase in state revenue, the governor level-funded unrestricted government general aid. It's currently 8.5% of our total revenue here in the city. This was a disappointment to municipal officials across the Commonwealth, that given the increases in state revenue and tax receipts, as well as increase in lottery receipts. And for those of you that can remember, the lottery, when it was put in place back in the early 70s, was intended to be used to go entirely to municipal governments. And over time, the state has, again, has not lived up to that obligation. Has, in fact, started to pull lottery money away to fund state agencies as opposed to funding local government. So obviously there was a great deal of disappointment that the governor did not increase unrestricted local aid. The House Speaker, Robert DeLeo, was at the MMA annual conference in January, and he had a promise that the House will do better. So we're hoping to hold him to that. The governor's proposal, and likely the House and Senate, will all both do the same thing on Chapter 70 education funding. That will increase by $5.2 million. Now, that's good news for us in terms of the money that will be available to the schools. The bad news of sorts on that is that when the state increases Chapter 70 money, that then increases the requirement that the city increase their local contribution. And if you recall the presentation I made a week or so ago on the net school spending, we're anticipating that in fiscal year 15 we'll have to go up $2 million. But if you, as you recall, we will make up that $2 million in several ways. One is we're going to have to increase our, we do increase in the 15 budget, the pension assessment, and a big chunk of that goes to school retirees, non-teacher school retirees. Health insurance will go up some for school retirees, and we'll also be doing some, making some increases in the amount of money that we put towards school maintenance items. But we will, as a budget you'll see, it does increase direct school spending by about $800,000. The budget that I have in front of you, based upon the Speaker's comments about promising more, and the Senate has made similar types of promises. We don't know what that means yet. What we've done in this is I've assumed a $400,000 increase in unrestricted government local aid. Now, the MMA is pushing for a 4.9% increase statewide, which would result in a little over $1 million for the city. So it's conceivable, although I don't think likely, it's conceivable that our delegation and other members of the House and the members of the Senate could push to set aside, I believe it's $45 million more in local aid, which would result in $1 million for the city of Lowell. That would go a long way towards helping us with some of our initiatives here in the city, as you will see. Charter schools, as I said, continue to be a problem. The reimbursement this year was reduced by another $891,000 in the 15 proposal, and our expenses increased 23% over fiscal year 14. So, and I'll have a chart in a second that will show you a little bit about this when we get into the expense side of things, but what we're seeing is an increasing gap, with the assessment going up and the reimbursement going down, leaving us with a large gap that we have to fill in order to meet the requirements of the state. And that, of course, eats into our ability to put money into other areas of local government, including the schools themselves. In terms of local receipts, we've estimated about a $620,000 increase in local receipts. It comes out to a little over 2.5%. These are going in and doing actual estimates based on forecasting and cost projections and historical actuals that we've done in each category. But you can see that we tend to be conservative in our budgeting here. We pushed it a little bit more perhaps this year, but you can see that going back to 2007, our actuals always exceed our budget. But this year, as I said, we did push it a little bit, and we think that that's a reasonable level. I wouldn't push it any more than that at this point in time. Maybe with a couple more months of information, the new manager may wish to do that, but I think being conservative this is what got the city into trouble back in the it got us back in trouble back in the 1990s. It got us into trouble in the mid-2000s, where these numbers get pushed too much, you can't achieve them, and then that cuts into the free cash that you have at the end of the year, or you end up with revenue deficits. So you don't want to run into that. On property taxes, we have had 3 consecutive years of minimal increase in property tax levy. In fiscal year 12, it was just about 1.25%. Fiscal year 13, it was 0, and fiscal year 14 was 0. And I'm sure you all read the Globe this weekend, or hopefully you did. The Globe did a very good piece on tax bills in the northeast section of the state, in which Lowell was, Essex actually saw a decrease of about $80 in their average tax bill. But that was the result of a revaluation that went on in there. And I think there may have been some other things going on there with override coming off the books or something like that. That's what happens in a lot of towns that do overrides. When those come off the books, you'll see for debt exclusion, you'll see the tax bill actually drop a little bit. With the city of Lowell, where we're not even at the levy limit, those types of things don't happen with us. Essex has an average tax bill, I think, of about $7,500. The city of Lowell has an average tax bill of about $3,000, or actually it's right in front of me here, $3,200. But we had a 0 increase. We were the lowest in the region. And if you look at it historically over the last several years, we by far are one of the lowest tax increases in the state. This chart gives you a sense of that. The blue line represents the city of Lowell for the single-family house average tax bill from 92 to 2014, and the red represents the state average. And you can see that we got close, going all the way back to 92, we got a little closer in 96. That we leveled off. We made a spike up again in 2006, 2007, those fiscal years, and then we leveled off really over that period of time. So the gap back in 2006 was about $1,200. The gap today is about $1,700. So we're really beating the state average, and but arguably, we're not really keeping up. We've kept those low, and as I said last week, in retrospect, I wish I had pushed more, and I know that wouldn't have been very popular, but I wish we had stuck to our strategy that shows on this next graph, where we implemented a tax policy back in 2008 to maintain the $5 million excess levy capacity. You can see back in 2004, it was very low, only about 0.5%, but then it jumped up to 3.28%, and then another jumped up again in 2006 to almost 6.9, and then went over 8% in fiscal year 07, the budget that was passed in June of 2006. We implemented a tax policy, and the council approved this in our policies, fiscal policies, back in fiscal year 2008, where we tried to keep it pretty much level. This is very similar. If you go back and you look at the oversight board that was put in place in the early 90s, they had a very similar type of policy that they put in place, and it produced a tremendous amount of stability for the city. we violated that, if you will. We went against that in the drop-off years of 13 and 14 particularly. I think now we have to make that adjustment upwards. On average, it will still level off to be about that 2.5%, maybe actually a little bit, it'll be actually be lower than that if you average the last 4 years. But you can see that that policy actually pays dividends for the city of having a moderate increase. In terms of expenditures, this gives you a sense of where the money goes, which is, see where the money comes from. We want to see where the money goes. Most of it goes to the schools. Over half the budget is school-related, followed by employee benefits. Now, we have brought much of that under control in the health area. Pensions are another problem, but we're hopefully over the next couple of years we'll be able to smooth that out, and then it should, with the stock market results of the last couple of years, that should start to level off a bit. And then police and fire make up the largest other categories for us in terms of where our money goes. I said we've made progress in the area of health insurance. We've bent the cost curve. From fiscal year 04 to fiscal year 11, insurance costs were increasing 9% per year on average. In fiscal year 15, we're only looking at a 2% increase. This year, the insurance represents 7.7% of our general fund expenses, which is down from 9.6% in 11 and 11.38% in 07. All this graph shows you is the health cost to the city and then the actual percentage change over time. We've made a number of changes through the years that have resulted in bringing this under control. Eliminating Master Medical was huge, and then obviously going to the GIC saved us a tremendous amount of money that we've been able to, of course it had the impact that we talked about last week, that we were able to put more money into the school budget, direct school budget, because they saved so much money. But on the city side, the retiree costs went down, which impacted our contribution to net minimum school spending. So, in the schools, we've, as I said earlier, a 5.2% or 4% increase in Chapter 70, including the governor's proposal. I expect that the House and Senate will match that. We're proposing an extra $800,000 this year in city contribution to the schools. But again, I'll hammer home the point, charter school costs continue to rise, which leaves the city to cover the gap in funding. A 22% reduction in reimbursement for charter school reimbursement, and 11% increase in charter spending, sending tuition. This graph really shows that very well. And it diverts Chapter 70 money from the public schools. In fiscal year 14, we've been advocating for full funding of the charter school reimbursement. We advocated for it last spring. We advocated for it just recently with, and I spoke with Representative Murphy on this a couple of weeks ago when there was a couple of amendments for a supplemental budget to put money back into communities and the charter school reimbursement. Unfortunately, both of those failed, although I understand there will be other efforts made before the end of the year, and the state surplus could be utilized to fund that, in our case, about $1.4 million. But this, the red shows the actual net charter school cost, and you can see that it's continued to grow to the point now that it's about $13 million is the net cost. The charter expense goes up, the charter revenue goes down, small increase back in with a supplemental budget in fiscal year 13, and then it dropped off again in 14 and again in 15. On the rest of general government, all new positions that we have are grant funded. There are no new general fund funded positions. All new ones were removed, and in fact, I also eliminated any vacant positions that had been vacant for a period of time that were never filled during this fiscal year, or in some cases going back to another fiscal year. So those were removed. The salary increases are the COLA and or scheduled step increases. In terms of percentages, the 2% increase, overall there's a 2% increase in personnel costs. reflecting the agreements that we have. And I would point out that the contracts that we've settled over the last 3 years included very major concessions on the part of the unions with regards to the elimination of sick time buyback, the putting in place additional management controls on injured on duty leave and how that's accrued, put in light duty. So all of these improvements will improve our long-term financial condition, but they, there is an increase in compensation during that period of time in order to buy those. Ordinary expenses are basically level funded. They're 0.07%. So that's, we've held those costs down. And that's been a constant. If you go back to fiscal year '08, you would see very small increase in any of our ordinary expenses, and in many cases decreases. So we've really held the line on those costs. We are looking at a $300,000 increase in school utility costs. Again, the energy improvements that we've made with the Amoresco project and other actions we've taken have resulted in those costs going down. Now, we do have the problem, or the issue, of we have 3 more contracts that we need to settle. There was one that was going to be before you today, and I pulled it back because we needed to go through some recalculations in order to come to a number that we agreed upon. And that has now been completed. And so you have 3 votes in front of you. What I'm recommending for next week is that there's a page here called Vote to Establish a Salary Reserve Stabilization Fund. And what I'm proposing next week is that a new stabilization fund be created specifically for salary reserves for the purpose of funding one-time expenses associated with salary obligations for fiscal years 13, 14, and 15. And further, transferring $950,000 from the general stabilization account to establish this fund. So basically what we will be doing is we'll be taking $950,000 out of the general stabilization fund, putting it into a new stabilization fund that's specific for a purpose. These are one-time costs. These retroactive payments are one-time in nature. They will not be recurring costs. The fiscal year 15 budget is based upon these increases included within departmental budgets. So it's just catching up with that. So rather than just this sort of sets it up now for you that you can draw upon this. This is specifically, the contract that we were hoping to get in here this week for you is the fire department budget for fire settlement. And so next week, in addition to that, there'll be a vote that I'll be sending on to you for transferring, as soon as you set up that $950,000, then transferring $400,000 of it out. If I could go back to that salary reserve, Councilor Kennedy and I just had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago, that in the fiscal year 13 budget, we set aside $1 million, a little over $1 million for salary settlements. In the fiscal year 14 budget, we did not include that, again, as we were trying to get to that tax rate. We pulled that out. But we need to settle these contracts. We got good language again in that contract, and I urge you to support that when it's brought in. The solicitor will be here to describe that to you and explain the elements within that contract. But this salary reserve fund is intended to replace that appropriation that we made back in 13 in setting that money aside. Any money that isn't used under this reserve fund, salary reserve fund or stabilization fund, would then go back to the regular stabilization fund at some point in the future in fiscal year 16. So that $400,000, then the remaining portion of the fire settlement is $500,000, and this breaks down the various accounts that will be drawn from to make that payment. So that's expenses and contract settlement, and I think I've explained all of that. It's $950,000, only to be used to fund the AFSCME 1705-2532 in the firefighters' retro payments. It'll be voted with a transfer and then the return. Now, one thing that when I was working on the budget early on, and this goes back into the November, December timeframe, and working with the new police superintendent, we discussed increasing the amount of, the number of police officers that we had. And there are a number of reasons why you want to do this. I know there has been talk about increasing it by 30 police officers or something along those lines. There's a number of problems with that. Obviously, one is, do we need 30 more? Two, what would the cost be that would result from that, and how would we pay for that? And three, the notion of adding those 30 plus what your normal turnover would be, you'd have to add 40 officers, and you'd be so far down the civil service list, and so putting 40 new officers into your department would be a training adventure to work them into the system. So the superintendent and I discussed that a more reasonable approach, and this was his take on it as well. He actually raised a couple of those points to me, that it makes more sense to actually try to do it in a measured way by adding 5 new officers this year and conceivably 5 new officers next year. Now, the budget that I have before you does not include these 5 officers, because as I said, we're not adding any staff. But I know that that's something the council may be interested in, and I wanted to give you a cost out of this in its entirety. And essentially, 5 new officers would cost about $346,000. There's a couple of different ways. There's 3 different ways you could do this. Well, there's probably more. But the 3 that I would suggest are, 1, if there's more local aid, you put the money towards that, adding those 3 new officers, if it goes beyond the $400,000. A second option would be to increase taxes to add these 5 new officers. That would have a minimal impact on taxes, but given the 3.5% increase I've already included within this in order to make a level service budget, it may be something you may be reluctant to do. The other opportunity is to cut other services, cut some other budgets, and do that. That becomes cumbersome because there's so many different priorities that the city has with regards to maintenance of infrastructure, the general operation of the city, which is very, very lean right now, maintaining the fire department at the appropriate level. There isn't a lot here that I think you can really get at to do that. So I think the other 2 options are your best bet to do that. Some other numbers, just so in the sort of more my closing, not so much for this, because I do think 5 more officers makes sense, but something you should always consider as you're looking at when you add personnel is what it does to the pension liability and what it does to the OPEB liability. These are unfunded liability, or the pension's funded, but it's on a funding schedule over the next 20 some odd years. The OPEB is something that's hanging out there. It's a huge number, and it's really as I've described before, the ticking time bomb that probably you will never have to deal with. But a future city council will have to deal with it, and there should be some consideration of this as you move forward. But that's a number for you to work off of. Likewise, additional firefighters. I did ask the fire chief to put together a budget that included 8 new firefighters to get to 0 company closings per shift. This was something that I believe it was Councilwoman Donza that asked for some information on this, and we gave that report back in the fall. There's a difference there of about $381,000 to add the additional firefighters. Now, you'll note that this does not include the same calculations on fringe benefits of health insurance, retiree costs, et cetera. But you can calculate that out, and certainly the stat office the budget office can calculate that out for you as well. Which brings us to capital plan. I do not have a capital plan for you. I'm hoping over the course of the next couple of days to sit down with Mr. Baldwin, Mr. Connolly, as well as some other staff people to look at this. But right now, we're projecting at $12 million in infrastructure investment. There is room in the forecast for an increase in the capital budget, and this is something we've been trying to do. The school buildings one is I won't say it's a challenge, it's an opportunity. You recall that we just filed, I think, 5 grant applications for the school building assistance to make some improvements to the schools. There are some large budget items in the capital budget for the school department that we have applied for funding for. We will not know that until June. So the challenge for us is including them in the capital budget eats away at our ability to do other things. The city engineer and I met today. There's about $1 million we were looking to put into paving this year, but it's also a bridge project out at on Lawrence Street that we want to get done. By the time the design is ready on that, we probably won't be able to do a building of that until fiscal year 16. So we think we can push that off. But we also want to do paving this year. So it's sort of combining everything to see what we can accomplish in this. But that gives you a sense of where we will be spending money on our capital plan. Which brings me towards nearing the end here of my presentation, but just to talk about reserves. Reserves are utilized for emergencies and specific purposes and provide a measure of fiscal flexibility. We include the following categories of reserves. The general and special purpose stabilization funds. We have set up that general purpose stabilization fund of roughly $9 million, $10 million. We did set aside the pension stabilization fund this year with $3 million of free cash back in the fall. We're going to be utilizing that entire amount in the fiscal year 15 budget because we need to be able to do that. This new stabilization fund will draw down the general stabilization fund by $950,000, but then it will be set aside specifically for that one-time purpose. And I stress, it's a one-time purpose. It's not to pay recurring costs. We have the Chapter 17 account, the $4.2 million that the state set up back in the 1990s for us. We drew upon that last week for the school budget, and that will have to be replenished next year. And as I explained last week, I did that for a purpose. So that money had to come back in. That was when you get free cash that comes from this fiscal year, you can transfer that back in to get that Chapter 17 account back up. Free cash. We don't have any free cash. You'll see in a couple seconds. The city in the past has kept free cash. I'm not a big advocate of that. I think as soon as you get free cash, you do something with it. You either spend it on one-time events, or you set up special stabilization funds, or you put in your general purpose stabilization fund, something of that sort. That way you always have access to it. Free cash, you lose the ability to use free cash after June 30th. So you don't, that gives you a little bit less flexibility. But the other part of it is you lose that flexibility between using it after June 30th through probably December 1st, December 15th. So it's not flexible in that regard. But the stabilization fund is more dedicated. It takes 6 votes to remove it from stabilization, so it adds that extra hurdle to ensure that there's any decisions of how you use that money is carefully thought out. We also look at excess levy capacity as a reserve. Now, the mayor and I have had discussions about this at meetings in the past. It's not a cash reserve, although it is perhaps the most flexible of all your money, because you can simply appropriate money and eat into that levy capacity. So we always explain it to the rating agencies as a resource that we could draw upon if we ever needed to draw upon it. And we have $12 million in excess levy capacity. We have one of the largest excess levy capacities in the Commonwealth, certainly the largest. We're probably the only one in this region that has excess levy capacity. So that's something that can be drawn upon, and it will be eaten into this year if you go with the appropriation level that will eat into that will require that 3.5% increase. And then we have the OPEB trust fund, that's $7.8 million that we set aside, which is very well received. It's not as high as some communities, but it's a lot higher than others. But it's an evidence that the city takes its post-employment benefit problem very seriously. We have about a $500 million issue there that needs to be addressed. And so this is a way of addressing that. That's probably the least flexible of everything, because you really can only take it out for the purpose of retiree health insurance. And so you will start to eat into that in the foreseeable future. But there's nothing right now that it's better to keep it off to the side. Our policy and the fiscal policies adopted by this by the City Council have been to keep reserves at 5 to 10% of the overall budget. And my recommendation is to continue this policy moving forward. And hopefully the council will do that, and future council will do that, because it is what helps us as we try to maintain some stability here in the city, which reflects itself in the bond rating, which I'll get to in a second. So this chart is, and everyone's seen this chart, it's a popular one out there. This tells you a little bit of what we've done with reserves of late. August of 13, we put the $7.8 million into the OPEB trust. November of 13, we put a little over $3 million from free cash into the pension assessment stabilization, and you'll draw on that in this year's, in the fiscal 15 budget. In February 14, we took just a week ago, we took $2 million out of the Chapter 17 to fund the net school spending requirement. And then next week, you'll I'm proposing that you take $950 from general stabilization, put it into the salary reserve stabilization. This gives you this chart, though, which, as I say, is very popular out there in the cyber world, shows what has happened here. Back in the early 2000s, we had good healthy reserves between free cash, the Chapter 17 account, and the excess levy capacity. By 2006, you'll note that free cash dropped into a negative. Chapter 17 was still there, never touched at $4.2 million, and the excess levy capacity had dropped dramatically. It had been much higher in the early 2000s, but sort of an odd, sort of perfect storm situation occurred there, where we had we drew down all of our reserves from $20 million in free cash or thereabouts down to nothing. Actually, it shows there about 17 million, I guess, down to nothing. It actually went into the negative by $2 million, and the excess levy capacity went way down as taxes skyrocketed. In that prior chart shows you that. We've now built that up. Our total reserves, including free cash, the stabilization fund, the Chapter 17 account, the excess levy capacity has grown to that $12 million number. The pension assessment stabilization fund in that little orange box you see there, and then the OPEB trust brings us up to a very healthy amount, which should be guarded and utilized very carefully. This next chart is just another cut at it, going back into the early 1980s to today. You can see our reserves at the last bar graph there. Bar shows that we've become much more diversified in our reserves and how we utilize those, how we establish those reserves. But we're up at a good, healthy $39 million. If you include things that, some people do and some people don't, like excess levy capacity, it isn't a cash reserve, but it produces financial stability for us, or fiscal flexibility in all of these other accounts that we've set up. It's a good, healthy amount, and it's what has paid off. So my closing recommendations as I wind down this presentation and in this meeting are that, one, we return to a tax policy, the tax policy that we set up back in 2008, of consistent, moderate increases. The 2.5% that we were looking at, or thereabouts, you don't necessarily have to. This year, I'm proposing 3.5%. You may have to go a little bit higher if you want to do a little bit more. You may be able to, or maybe you don't. You want to cut it back a little bit, and you can make some cuts. But that's moving forward. You really should have less spikes in valleys. It should be a constant, moderate annual increase. I think that makes the most sense for the city and for any municipality. you want to maintain adequate reserves with a goal of building reserves towards the recommended 5% or 10% of general operating revenues. Now that going back for a second here, that $39 million, I throw that out there to show you everything that we've set aside. The $7.8 million, there's two ways of looking at that. You can call it a reserve, but then you'll still be left with a very large unfunded liability. The other way of looking at it is it knocks down that liability. It depends on how you want to really utilize it on your books. The fiscal flexibility is something that the excess levy capacity is something that you don't necessarily count as reserves. So that 39 is somewhat of a misnomer, if you will, or it's pushing that number to prove a point here of what we've done in terms of building up our ability to deal with problems. But it's not really what Moody's or S&P would call reserves. So going back to my recommendations here, keep those reserves at 5 to 10% of operating revenues. And then lastly, continue the best practices that we've put in place here over the last 7+ years. Long-term forecasting. Tom Moses was top-notch at that, as well as so many other things. But certainly, long-term forecasting is crucial to be able to make rational decisions of how you manage your finances. Capital planning, invest in the infrastructure and do it in a way that makes sense. And that ties in well with the long-term forecasting. And then lastly, the data-driven decision-making. We talked about it with the police today, of how we deploy personnel in the police department is done by utilizing data. The same goes for how we operate city government in the most efficient and effective way and make it the most accountable, is to do it through data, to do it through information and not anecdote. And I think that has proven to be very helpful in saving us money and again, making us much more efficient. The results, I think, speak for themselves. I think in terms of what we've been able to accomplish with the tax rate, even though I think we should have gone up some, keeping that under control is a result of what we've done with forecasting, capital investment, data-driven decision-making, and how we've been operating the city's finances. And it certainly resulted in our being taken off the watch list by the Department of Revenue and actually being hailed really by the DOR is really an example for other cities to utilize, particularly the work that Shara Wright did with the books. But the other result that I'll just point to is our bond rating. The bond rating is something that I know that some people don't necessarily think it's important, but it is important. It's a credit rating for the city, just as we all have our own individual credit ratings that tell what type of risk we are. And the result of that is you save money in the interest that you pay, and you become a much more attractive place for investors that want to invest in a city that has stable finances, that can maintain its infrastructure, that can maintain its services. In 2006, Moody's had downgraded us in March down to an A3 with a negative outlook. I recall having that discussion with the city council, in fact, during my interview, that downgrading had taken place. S&P at that point in time had rated us an A rating. In fiscal year, or moving along from that, Moody's did upgrade us to an A1. And had a neutral rating for us, and we were able to get S&P to move us up to an A+ rating. Today, we stand with Moody's as an A1 with a positive rating, and as of this morning, Standard & Poor's has upgraded us again to a AA-, which is the highest rating the city of Lowell has ever received. They did that. We had a surveillance call with them last week. They reached out to us in follow-up to the rating that they had done for us last fall. They wanted to follow up and see how we closed fiscal year 13. That had not been closed at the time. They wanted to know how we were doing on fiscal year 14, where we stood with our planning for fiscal year 15. The end result of that was that they gave us an upgrading to that AA-. They did express some concerns. I will tell you, we'll see what the rating comes out, the credit rating when it comes out tomorrow, the report. But there were issues regarding the, how the policies are going to be moving forward with the new administration. And they were of the opinion, though, that what has been accomplished here in the city over the last several years is such that they were going to give us that upgrade to the AA- level, and that with the assumption that the city council would continue the same path that we have followed over the last several years. So great news for the city to have that AA-. It's something I'm very proud of, and I'm glad we were able to accomplish that for the city and for the city council at the, I guess, the tail end of the administration here. I've spoken to the city clerk, the future acting city manager. I have told him I will be available as he goes through the process, and certainly as the next manager goes through the process, to discuss the budget in more detail. Certainly, the city council, if they wish, can contact me with any questions on this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Council Kennedy?
Nice.
Excuse me, Council Kennedy, can you put your mic on? They can't hear you at home.
Sorry.
Thank you.
The presentation, the 5 additional officers is not included.
Okay.
I asked him to include it in his recommendation, but it's not included in my recommendation, because I wanted to just produce you with a level service budget.
Okay.
If I were staying, I might include that. I'd have to wait and see what the local aid number looked like. So at this point, with the local aid number being what I think it's going to be, I don't have it in there. I think this council's going to have to come to some sense of how much they want to deal with the tax issue, and whether there's other areas. As we get closer, the problem is, and this is the problem of doing the budget this early, the towns always do it this early. But we have the benefit here where we can wait until June. You can get some better numbers. I would wait until May and see where we stand. There may be some savings in solid waste. Recycling is very high the first month, phenomenally high. Whether that might be able to be adjusted is a possibility. There may be some other areas of savings that could be identified that should be tracked carefully. And we may get that additional local aid. Otherwise, any type of decision like that is either going to require some cuts in other services,
Yep.
or additional taxes.
Okay. But the only thing missing out of the police budget would be the 5 officers.
Exactly.
The 5, okay.
Right.
And you also spoke in your presentation about the charter school and about the need for maybe legislation or having the Commonwealth take responsibility for charter schools.
Correct.
More so than they do now. And so is there legislation pending at all? Are you aware of any, or is the Mass Municipal Association, have they endorsed any legislation, or is there something? Is there I guess what I'm getting to, is there an action that the city council could take that might help move that along? Mm-hmm. Or should the city council maybe initiate that action and maybe join with other communities in the area? I suspect lots of them would want to.
Lowell, the 2 big ones for charter school, Lowell and Boston. And last year I was in touch more with Mayor Menino's finance people on this issue. We haven't had much discussion this year, just a little bit of discussion with that. But there's no legislation right now We're waiting to see what the House budget does. The MMA has taken a position of full funding of the charter school reimbursement. I think the council should watch that carefully, and should urge the delegation to make that a priority. I had that discussion with Representative Murphy last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, when there was I actually, in my role as chair of the MMA Fiscal Policy Committee, I met with the Secretary of Administration and Finance at the Local Government Advisory Committee to make a push for including it in a supplemental budget. There was a House amendment of the supplemental budget to set aside, I think it was $10 million. That was defeated. There was a Senate proposal of $28 million. That too was defeated. But I did speak to Representative Murphy about it, and he indicated that the delegation would be supporting anything like that. But it really would require this House and the Senate to include it in their budget proposals.
Okay. What about Springfield and Worcester? Don't they have, what about charter schools?
They do, but the Boston and Lowell jump out at me. Obviously, I know the problems in Lowell. Boston's a big one as well. I'm sure they have problems, but it doesn't seem to be quite as serious out there. Just in terms, they're huge problems. But in terms of the number one and number two, we seem to have a little bit more in terms of charter impact.
And on the revenue side, last year or a couple of years ago, we put new parking meters in along Father Morissette.
Correct.
And there were projections on how those were going to, what they were going to produce for us. Are those projections, are they holding up to those projections? Are those projections a little bit high, or?
They haven't really, I would say they're probably a little low right now, but we're working right now with the Wanna-Lancet people about making some arrangements with them for the use of some of those parking spaces that will dedicate revenue to us. But they really just went in place back in, I think, September.
Yeah.
And so we don't even have 6 months under our belt at this point. And all of those monies go to the parking enterprise. Those types of revenues will be crucial to fund the $7 million worth of improvements to the Lower Locks Garage. That's where you would use those monies.
Right.
But, right.
Okay. And I understand that there hasn't really been a full year, or there's just been a few months, but I was just curious as to how that was going along. I don't know firsthand, but I remember that when we were considering putting those in, I heard from people that were over at the Wanna-Lancet Mills that they would really need the parking. But what I've heard from people that are just driving by is that they're maybe underutilized at this point. But we're also not looking at the best part of the year anyway.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
how about the snow budget? What kind of a deficit are we looking at? Are we really way behind on that? Or?
In our budget, we include $500,000 for a snow and ice deficit. Last number I saw was that we were about that, but that was before some later storm bills came in and probably before we filled the salt sheds up again. You may have read that there were some issues with salt, and we wanted to make sure we had some. So it's probably higher than that, but we also only include a portion of the FEMA money. We never got the FEMA money last year that we expected. So that now, a portion of that is being carried into this year as a revenue, but not all of it. So if all of that comes through, we should be able to address most, if not all of that. And the other action I would propose or make a recommendation, I think Ms. Wright already left this for the acting and the permanent auditor, are that be very aggressive at the end of the year to close out purchase orders. And she's already sent out, we had a department head meeting last week where she told department heads to do this, and hopefully they'll all obey her, even though she's gone, is to close out those purchase orders so that we can scoop that money back into and be able to put it towards the snow and ice deficit. That's what we've done almost every year the last 7 years, so that we don't have a snow and ice deficit moving into the next fiscal year.
Okay. Did you say we didn't get the FEMA money yet?
We did not.
Okay, but we should get it.
We should get it,
haven't gotten
yes.
it so far.
Yeah.
But we really haven't had in a state of emergency this year, have we? With
No,
any
we
of these
haven't.
storms, they haven't been big enough to
Nope.
do that. All right, I just have maybe two more questions. One is that, in your presentation, you indicated that you eliminated all vacant positions, or positions that have been vacant for many years, several years. Why did you do that? Why wouldn't you just fund them at $1 or just zero fund them? I mean, what was the, why would you, what's the, just to clean up the budget, the document?
Just to wipe out the money. I mean, it's, I don't, I don't use that, there used to be I don't know what you want to call it, technique. There was as long as you left $1 there, you could always fill it.
Yep.
My position is, as long as the city council establishes a position, you can always put it in there. So they still sit on the books as positions. They're in the ordinance as positions. So therefore, if someone wanted to fill it, they could just fill it if they had the money.
Okay, all right, I misunderstood. I thought the.
I didn't wipe them off the ordinance. Right.
Okay, I got you. And then.
So $1 or $0, it doesn't really matter to me, but you could put $1 in if you
Right.
wanted to. Yep.
Okay. And then also in your presentation, you mentioned at one point that there was $800,000 going to school. Why is that? Going to an $800,000 additional to schools?
Correct.
What is that? Why are we doing that?
To meet net school spending. Between the money we're putting towards the pensions, the money we're putting towards health insurance. If you look at the presentation I did a week ago, I think I used $800,000 a week ago that to bring us up to net school spending requirements in fiscal year 15.
Okay, and let me just say that, just finally, that I think that your recommendation or in cautioning us that we should always maintain a reserve is sound, and it's good advice to follow, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Samaras, then Council Martin.
Mr. Manager, first, I want to thank you for all the work that you did with this budget. It's greatly appreciated. Regard to charter schools, the formula is something that's always I've been bothered by, because what happens, systems most in need of money lose that money. But I need some clarification, okay? It was my original understanding when charter schools came in that if the city of Lowell, say, spent $5,000 per capita for each child, and 5 children opted to go to a charter school, the city would lose the $50,000. The charter school would get that $50,000. It'd be like a year grace time period. Is that still in effect, or is this now, are we now required to go over and above that simple formula that was stated before? Or
No,
was it accurate?
That's basically it. The difference is that when you new children go, there's a formula of 100. You get the full amount the first year as a reimbursement to cover that. The second year, I think it's 50%. Third year, it's 25.
Okay.
Might be off. It might be 75,
All right.
25. But it's a phased-in approach that helps with that.
I see. I mean, that's something that has to be corrected. In cities like Lowell, if we're expected to progress in our school system, we're just not going to be able to do it.
That's right.
As Councilor Kennedy spoke about, what initiatives are going on, is there anything that we'll say city managers have talked about as a possibility of how to approach this matter?
Just the same, trying to get the legislature, we didn't have much luck with the administration. Again, I've had conversations with both at the local government advisory committee with the Secretary of Administration and Finance. I had a one-on-one with the Secretary earlier in January, try to raise this issue, and but the administration is, they chose to underfund it even more this year. The legislature has expressed some interest. It's not it's a big issue to Boston. It's a big issue to Lowell. It is a big issue, although not maybe as much to Worcester and Springfield and some other ones. But then when you look at the entire state, other communities aren't as affected by it. Like that House amendment for the supplemental budget. In our case, I can't remember what it was. We're supposed to be getting $1.4 million more in fiscal year 14, But they were only going to fund a portion of it, and it was very small money, and I happened to look and see what other area communities, and they were getting, $1,400, something, so they didn't, it's not a big issue for those.
Thank you.
Council Martin?
Thanks. I didn't really want to get into that too much, but, so the formula is there. The state says we're going to reimburse you this much, but they don't fund the reimbursement, right? So
Correct.
it's really not new legislation. It's just funding the program that exists.
Correct.
And then when the hit comes, the hit is on the municipal side of the budget, not the school budget, right?
That's right.
Right. So that's sort of like another swipe. So I agree, and we need to make the case, I guess, at the legislature. You would think the Boston delegation would have a little more influence, but it remains to be seen, I guess.
Right.
I had some specific questions, though, about these proposed votes for next week.
Correct.
So, first one is to take $950,000 from the general reserve account and put it into salary stabilization. And that is to fund, and then there's other votes to take $400,000 out of that,
Correct.
and then another $500,000 from the sources that are identified,
Correct.
right? So there would still be $500,000 in this salary account.
Yes.
So even though it's still, all right, so, and that's to fund the retro.
Just retro.
The retro payments in the proposed fire department contract that is close to being settled?
Correct. The 400 would be used for that. The other $550,000 would be available for the settlement of other contracts that are out there.
For the retro pay?
Just for retro.
Right. And is that adequate, assuming the other unions settled along the same parameters that the fire department settled?
We believe it is.
Okay. And is that contract, where's the status of the fire department?
The fire department, I think we're probably done. That will be, my guess is that will be done. We were working on the final language today. That will be done. We actually had a signed memorandum of agreement, but we had to make some adjustments with some side letters to
So
get that.
potentially that's coming to us
Next Tuesday.
or shortly thereafter?
Correct.
Okay. So, all right, so I just want to make sure I had it right, because even though it's 900, it's not the same. There is going to be money left behind in that stabilization.
There'll be money left in that, right, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So,
It's just a coincidence, it's roughly $900,000.
so again, I appreciate the effort that's gone into this. This is, certainly the earliest we've ever had this type of information, and I know some of it's very preliminary, but it is a good blueprint going forward. So we certainly appreciate the effort of you and the others that worked hard for this, and I'm sure your successor will appreciate it very much. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Linazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to express my thanks to Manager Lynch and his team for putting this together and getting it to us as promised in a preliminary basis. To follow up on a couple of questions that Councilor Kennedy raised relative to school spending and raising recommending an additional $800,000 contribution to the schools, is $800,000 above the FY13 $3.8 million shortfall in net school spending, or is it above the 4.2 or 4.3 million on the FY14 net school spending?
And I'll go back to the other, and I don't have that presentation in front of me right now, but we had the $3.8 million.
Right.
And we think we can work that down by refiling some paperwork. We have the DPW right now going through all the work orders during fiscal year 13 that were not billed off to the schools. So those are being worked on. Those will be passed off.
It was about 500,000, I think. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
About $300,000. We're hoping. One caveat there is I was hoping to get Jay Lang and I have talked about this. The school nurses. In most communities, the school nurses are part of the school department. So that's a direct cost that goes, as well as their health insurance. Because our school nurses are a part of the health department, And we've been trying to push them over to the school department, and there's been a reluctance to do that. But because they're part of the health department, we're able to count the salaries but not the benefits. And that doesn't seem to make sense. So we're arguing, and we're working with we have been working with the state to get their health insurance counted as well. Then, so if we can knock that down by about, I think that's about $500,000. So we'll get it down to about 3.3. That $2 million, and these numbers might be a little bit off. I'd have to go back to the presentation. But that $2 million you set aside last year goes specifically to fiscal year 13, which leaves you a $1.3 million in that. And then and then there's an additional amount for fiscal year 14 that we didn't, about $400,000, I think it was. If we can knock that down again, there's still a gap there that for the leftover of 13 and 14. And then 15, we're trying to fully fund with the $800,000 plus.
Okay.
But I think my presentation to you last week showed that later in the fiscal year, when you have either free cash or you've repaid the Chapter 17 account, you could take Chapter 17 money again and then put it back in the following year, or something along those lines to do that.
Okay.
And then you'd be caught up.
Okay. As a follow-up, if I could, Mr. Mayor, the 3.5% increase in tax levy recommendation, does that include, does that assume that those, assume that those assumptions are being met? The assumptions that you just laid out, the $3.5 million tax increase assumes that those will be met, meaning that the 500,000 or 350 in the DPW change orders and the other.
The 3 point, well, right, it assumes all of that.
Assumes all of that.
I'm not asking for 3.5. The 3.5% is intended just for a property tax increase,
Right.
just for the level service budget, including that $800,000. If you want to put more money into the schools, you'd have to go up above the 3.5%.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Is
Mr.
that
Mayor.
council? Council Belanger?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with my colleagues. Mr. Manager, thank you very much for putting together this before your departure. It is greatly appreciated. We have a gauge to work with going into the new administration. Thank you very much. But to ask you a question, you had a MMA conference in January, and Mr. Speaker said, quote, "The House will do better." Does this mean we can anticipate increase in Chapter 70 funding? Is that what he's alluding to?
I don't think he's talking Chapter 70 funding. I think he's talking the increase in the unrestricted general government local aid, the UGGA.
Okay. And is it a lot earlier than you historically do the budget now? Actual numbers come in in May. Could you foresee any big differential here?
Between now and then?
Between now and then?
The big change you'll get is the House will come out with their budget probably later on this month to early April. The Senate will come out in late April, early May. So you'll know then where you stand with local aid. And so that's a big one. I don't think you're going to see much of a change in new growth. We've pushed that one pretty well. We have some properties that are coming off tax agreements, 121A tax agreements, and that we counted as new growth. The miscellaneous receipts, maybe there'll be something there, but I think you want to be cautious on that. So I would say that those will probably stay the same. So your revenues are pretty much going to stay where they are. We can project out what we've been spending for health insurance. That's right on track. The solid waste, there might be a little bit of flexibility there, but we saw January a very high recycling rate in January, but that's just 1 month with the new bins. If we could have January, February, March, April, you get a better handle. There might be a little bit of play there, but it's not going to be a lot. The number that's in the budget for solid waste is basically the contract number, and the estimates that we have for tonnage minus the $192,000 rebate that Waste Management is giving us from the Wheelabrator contract. I don't see much else happening in the expense side, really. So I don't think you'll see a lot. There may be some play there, but there's not a lot.
Okay. Well, my concern is with the, you're proposing a 3.5% tax increase. When are we going to be reassessing properties in the city? It's every couple of years, correct? And
We
when do
do
it?
we do a full reevaluation every year. We just completed it. And we do a market adjustment every year. So we, I think that might have been the situation in Essex. They only do the valuation every 3 years, and they saw that happen. We do an adjustment each year so we don't see spikes and valleys in that. Just to be clear, though, because there's been some misunderstanding on this in some quarters, I know that somehow we raise more money by changing the values. But we don't. I mean, your values are your values. They're set by the market. What we do is, since Proposition 2.5, and it's funny, Proposition 2.5 has been on the books now for 30 some odd years, and there's still people still don't fully understand it. It's not a case where you set a tax rate and then you watch your values go up or go down, and you see your values go up, and therefore you make all this money. We don't set a rate. We set a levy, how much money we're going to collect in taxes, and then your tax rate is set by how much money you're going to raise as a ratio to how much money, how much the total value of the city is. So if the values go up, the tax rate goes down. If the values go down, the tax rate goes up. You collect the amount that you're going to collect, that you set in your budget. And so for this, we set 3.5% more than we did in fiscal year 14.
Okay, I understand, Mr. Manager, but the good news is Lowell's property values have maintained fairly well over the years. I think have gone an upward trajectory, to be
They
honest
have,
with you.
very high.
We're doing very, very well.
Boston Magazine actually noted that our values have gone up about 19%, I think, right?
And that's great to the average homeowner, and I've explained that, campaigning or whatnot, that, we want our property values to go up. Do we not? When recession hit in 2006, property values started to decline. We soon have been rebounding, I believe, the last couple of years, and that's good for all of us. Our property values are up, and that's not the city's fault. But I anticipate seeing here a rate increase and assessed value increase. That's what I foresee here.
Well, even if you did do that, again, that doesn't produce more of an impact. If your rate, we're not raising the rate. We're raising the total amount of taxes. So if you see your total taxes go up by 3.5%, if your values stayed the same, your rate would go up by that amount. If your values go up a lot, then your rate goes down. It's just, that's the way it works.
Okay? All right.
I know, because I know that when we said that last year, and I, not to be critical of people of the Fourth Estate or people who pretend to be part of the Fourth Estate who are out there saying that, well, they say taxes are going to stay the same, but they're just going to shift the values. That's not how it works. That's a total lack of understanding of how the process works. What happens is you set the amount that you're going to tax, and the rate that you charge is based upon how much you're going to raise as a ratio to how much your total value is. And that gives you a rate. That gives you a rate to get that amount of money off of the value. So if your values go up, your rate goes down.
Okay, Mr. Manager, well, most certainly budgeting has been your forte in your administration for sure, and I trust most of these numbers are probably going to be right on, fortunately. But as we get closer, when the actual numbers come in, we'll really get to the nitty-gritty on this to see what the city needs to do, so.
I'll be watching.
Yeah, we will too. But thank you for your input, Mr. Manager. Thank you very much.
Cold drink in hand.
Further discussion on this presentation.
If I may, I just want to hammer home the AA rating. It's a huge accomplishment for the finance team.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Manager?
Well said.
Anything else by the members of the council? Motion to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file by Councilor O'Rourke, seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Excuse me, motion carries. Back to the city council agenda, item 5-1. Votes from the city manager. It's a vote, license agreement overhanging sign, 124 University Ave, BMH University LLC. Motion to waive the full reading by Council Kennedy, seconded by Council Belanger. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Second reading by title. Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, a vote in City Council authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with BMH University LLC to encroach upon the City of Lowell property at 124 University Avenue. What is the wish of the body?
Approval.
Move to approve by Council Mercia, seconded by Council Milonazo. Roll call.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Next item, 5-2 on the agenda. It's a vote. Apply, accept, and expend a grant for $400,000 to improvement to the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Leahy, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Second reading by title. Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the City of Lowell, a vote in City Council authorizing the city manager to apply for, accept, and expend a grant in the amount of $400,000 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Cultural Facility Fund through the Mass Development and for the Massachusetts Cultural Council for the proposed capital improvements to the Lowell Memorial Auditorium in the City of Lowell. Was a wish of the body.
Move approval?
Move approval by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Samaras. Roll call.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Mr. Manager, did you want to speak on this item?
If I could, Mr. Mayor, and I should have jumped in earlier, I guess. This will require a match from the city, but it continues our progress in restoring that building, and we've been very successful in receiving these grants. In the past, we've tried to use the ticket surcharge money. There may not be, as some of you know, the ticket surcharge money projections that were done by a few years back have not really met our expectations, but it is a crucial building in the city. It's operating very well, and we think it's important that this move take place. New heating system is a big part of it, but beyond that, the improvements that will take place will improve the overall appearance and, sort of stabilize the building itself. And also, there's an improvement to do something with the back loading dock that will allow us to do far more shows that we can take place there that have not been able to take place over the last number of years.
Okay, thank you. Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a reason why the auditorium was not included in the Amoresco contract?
I don't believe on that one, well, in that one, there could be a couple of issues on that. We did put solar on top of that through the Amoresco project. I don't think at the time, the boiler was in such a shape that there was the payback that was necessary with that, given the conditions. And it could be that the heating bills at the time came from the lessee of the property, and the solar comes right off into our facility, into our bills. But that now, the structure that we have, those heating bills actually hit our bottom line.
Okay.
So it's useful for us to get that work done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on this item? We already took the roll call. Next item is a vote to accept and approve a temporary appointment of Michael Q. Geary for the position of acting city manager and establish the temporary salary of $145,000.
Move approval?
Motion to waive the full reading by Council Belanger, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Second reading by title, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, to vote in City Council to accept and approve the temporary appointment of Michael Q. Gary for the position of acting city manager and establish the salary thereof.
Move approval.
Move to approve by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Roll call.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Next item, 5-4, vote to accept and approve temporary appointment of Angela Gitchia for the position of acting city clerk and establish the temporary salary of $88,000. Motion to waive the full reading by
So moved.
Councilor Kennedy, motion by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Second reading by title, Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the City of Lowell. Vote in City Council to accept and approve the temporary appointment of Angela Gitchia for the position of acting city clerk and establish the temporary salary of $88,000.
Move approval.
Move approval.
Move approval by Council Mercia, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Roll call.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Next item is a vote to accept and approve the temporary appointment of Karen O'Byrne for the position of acting city auditor and establish the temporary salary of $86,000. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Second reading by title, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell. Vote in City Council to accept and approve the temporary appointment of Karen O'Byrne for the position of acting city auditor and establish a temporary salary of $86,000. What is the wish of the body?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Samaras. Roll call.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Next item is an order from the city manager, order 60-day trial. Motion to waive the full reading by Council Mercia, second by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. The second reading by title is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Lowell, order in City Council pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances in the City of Lowell, Massachusetts concerning Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are hereby amended for a period of 60 days. What is the wish of the body?
Move approval.
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Milonazo, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Roll call.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Moving on to reports, subcommittee reports. If there's no objection from the body, I could give just a report on the special meeting yesterday, as well as a report on from the Finance Subcommittee. Yesterday evening at 5 p.m., the City Council met in a special meeting to discuss the selection process of the city manager and the city auditor. The motion was made by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Belanger, to set up a public hearing process on Wednesday, March 12th at 7 p.m. here in Council Chamber. The purpose of this public hearing is, as well as to be posted in the newspaper by the city clerk. The purpose of this hearing is to allow participation of the public and to invite them to come down to City Hall and state their opinion, their concerns, their wishes for the next city manager. So that is tomorrow night. Council Belanger?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, again, it was a great motion by Councilor Mercia, absolutely necessary, but I just want to stress that, you know, what we're looking, we mentioned it last night, but what we're looking for, most certainly input from the public, but we don't want any endorsement of candidates whatsoever. We want to know what the public is looking for in a manager and what they expect from us. So I just want to make that perfectly clear that we're not looking for endorsements here. We want what the public is looking for in a manager. So I'd like to state that clearly, just to...
Thank you, Councilor. So again, that's not tomorrow, next Wednesday at 7 p.m. In Council Chamber. Council also set up criteria for members to submit to the city clerk those names that they wish to be interviewed. 5 names, 5 candidates for city manager, 3 names for city auditor. The clerk will tally those results and get those results to the city council. After Wednesday's meeting, we will set up another meeting to go through the interview process and set up times and dates for both of those candidates. So that's a report of progress from the special meeting yesterday. Further discussion? Motion to accept that report as a report of progress by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Finance Subcommittee met subsequent to the special meeting. The purpose of that was to discuss a motion from Councilor Kennedy that was referred to the subcommittee to discuss salaries for the acting city clerk to be city manager, the acting city clerk, and the acting city auditor. So a motion was made to adopt the starting salary of the city manager, the prior city manager, or the city manager, of $145,000, as well as to give an increase to both acting city auditor and acting city clerk of $20,000 that's going to be prorated on a weekly basis, which we just adopted those recommendations. Just for the public, this is just a temporary increase for the increased duties that they will be assuming for anywhere from 4 to 6 week period that was discussed at the subcommittee meeting. So, and that was just adopted this evening. So that's again a report of progress from the Finance Subcommittee. Further discussion? Anything to add by members? Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Councilor Milonazo, second by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Councilor Rourke and the Public Safety Subcommittee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before tonight's meeting, we had our first Public Safety Subcommittee meeting of the year with myself, Councilor Mercier, and Councilor Belanger. It was very well attended. We had the entire City Council, a state delegation, the city administration, as well as neighborhood leaders. Tonight's meeting was regards to the motion by Mayor Elliott, which was seconded by Councilor Kennedy, concerning the Lowell Police Department's reorganization and their community policing program and initiatives. Superintendent Taylor gave a detailed, very good presentation to the council, to the subcommittee, and it was very well received by all that was here. I look forward to helping them out with what they need going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion on that report? Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I just want to say the meeting went very well, and we did want to have say a special thanks to the new police chief. He took all the concerns in from the neighborhood groups, the council, the administration, and it was a good collaborative effort from everybody. And it just goes to show you again what we do here in Lowell. Everybody got together. It was a good motion. And great work by the police department and the administration with the support of the council and the neighborhood groups. So looking forward to this plan being implemented and looking for some good results. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion on the Public Safety Subcommittee report? Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Councilor Belanger, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Under petitions, there are 11 claims for property damage. Motion to refer to the Law Department for report and recommendation
So moved.
by Counselor Kennedy, seconded by Counselor Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Your Honor.
Motion carries. On the
Thank you.
motion, Counselor?
I just have one quick question to you, through you to the manager. Most of these were potholes, but there was one particular incident where there was damage on a Thursday, and then there was damage the following Friday about the same time. So normally that should get reported. I mean, there was a police report on the first one, say Thursday, and then 24 hours later, we have two incidents at the same time the next day. So would it be procedure for the police to report that, or is that something we should look into?
Look at that, Counselor, and we'll,
Well, you know what I mean, it just.
Yeah, right.
Because I know there's a 24-hour rule, right? We do try to fill them,
fill it
but I'm
within
just
that.
wondering if we need
yeah,
to just
I'd have to check on that and see what
tighten up.
happened
Okay,
there.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on to the next item, miscellaneous. Leonidas Diaz requests one handicap parking sign at 27 Walnut Street. Motion to refer traffic engineer for a report and recommendation
So moved.
by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Mercia on the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to amend that and request a 60-day trial on it.
Motion by Councilor Mercia to amend, seconded by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor of the motion, of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion to approve as amended by Councilor Samaras, seconded by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Next item under miscellanea, Charter Environmental Incorporated requests the use of city driveway off Westford Street to the city landfill. Motion to refer to the Law Department to draft proper vote by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Next section of the agenda under City Council motions. First motion, Councilor Kennedy requests North Middlesex Council of Government calibrate the gas dispensers at 309 Chelmsford Street and provide the City Council with a report on the status of all calibrations in the city. Second by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, I think 309 Chestnut Street is a newer gas station, and I don't believe that none of the gas dispensers have the seal or the thing that they've been tested.
Okay.
And so it would be good if the council of governments could get up there and do that one. But what occurred to me is that maybe the reason they didn't do it is because it's a new station. And I don't know where they get their information or how they know which ones to do. But it could be that when new ones come on, there might be a little gap in the flow of information there. And so it could be that brand-new gas stations, maybe they don't pick those up. So, if you, what I would like as part of this motion is that you ask them for a report on how they're doing, if they're keeping up with those, if they're keeping up with the gas stations and how they pick up the new ones.
Okay, we'll get that.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Second motion of the night. Councilor Kennedy requests city manager have proper department examine the recent paving job on Westview Road and provide a report to the city council. Second by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. Mr. Manager, this street was just paved, and actually, when I went up to look at it, if you drive up and down this street, you wouldn't understand why I would file a motion like this. But if you were to walk your dog up and down the street, you would see that there are little cracks here and there already, even though it was just paved last last August. You know, I'm not really sure if that's standard and whether it's supposed to be like that, but it would seem to me that maybe not this year, but next year, if those cracks continue to get larger, and some of them are, 5, 6, 7 feet long, that maybe they would create depressions or there would be potholes there. And that, we just paid to have that street done. And so I thought it might be prudent if somebody from the city went up and just looked and made sure that that job was up to par. Even though it looks good now, maybe it's deficient in some way.
Counsel Leahy?
Thank you. Just on that motion too, towards the end of the street, there's already a cutout and some holes been dug, so it sounds like you know about.
I do. That was a water, I think that was a water break that happened out there.
Oh, all right. So it
Water
still
or
needs to
gas,
be
I can't
filled,
recall
yeah.
now. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Next motion of the night by Counsel Kennedy. Request city manager explain the reasoning behind hiring an outside law firm as a hearing officer for the police personnel hearings. Second by Counsel Rourke. Counsel Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. Mr. Manager, this is two things occurred to me. One is that this is a very sensitive matter and that maybe this is something that, and it's obviously something that your successor is going to have to deal with. And so that maybe it would be best if your successor named the hearing officer. That's number one. Number two is, if it's going to be you, then why does it need to be someone from the outside counsel? I mean, I think this is a law firm that the city has used quite often, and that you maybe used in Chelmsford before you came to the city. So I'm sure that you chose them because you have a lot of confidence in them. At the same time, I guess I don't understand why the hearing officer couldn't be in-house. It seems like it would be a lot cheaper. And then it also occurred to me that maybe it would be better if this was just, if the naming of the hearing officer was just put off and let the next city manager name that. So that's the reason for the motion. So do you have a response on that?
I guess as far as the law firm that was, the lawyer from the law firm that was chosen, we haven't used Copeland and Page that much here. I've gone to them for a variety of issues from time to time over the last 7.5 years. They are the largest municipal law firm out there. They represent about over 100 communities across the Commonwealth. They have a very strong practice in labor relations. The individual that I chose has been a hearing officer on a number of occasions. She had been a city solicitor for Braintree and came highly recommended from a number of people. And what I wanted to do is respond to, we want this to move forward in an expeditious way, but we also want to make sure that the police are, that their rights are protected. And so we didn't want to push this. I could have pushed this so that the hearings be held while I was here, but that really wouldn't have lent itself to enough time for me to hear the evidence and then issue a decision. So I wanted to keep the ball rolling on this so that it's done in an expeditious manner, but still offer them their rights, that it be done by someone who has experience. This is a very, very important case for the city, and I didn't want anyone, I felt it was better to have someone from the outside. If there was going to be someone brought in, it wasn't going to be the appointing authority, that'd be done from the outside. Many communities, in fact, always use hearing officers. They don't use the appointing authority because the appointing authority has information right off, and they felt that it sort of, removes that individual from the decision-making and lets a third party come in and take another look. And I felt that we needed, so that was basically it. We needed to keep the ball rolling, looking for someone with the necessary expertise, and that would be it, I guess.
I think that,
And there really is, and to your other point of having someone else here, I don't know who else here would have the capability of being the hearing officer, frankly.
well, neither do I, and I'm not suggesting that there should be someone else. It just occurred to me that if it was someone in-house, that it would be a lot cheaper. I think that in the past several years, we've spent, the city has spent somewhere in the vicinity of $100,000 with this law firm, which, some people might look at that and say that's a lot of money, and others may look at it and say, well, it isn't all that much. But, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is that what the hearing officer does, their function is to hear all the facts and then make recommendations that they then present to you. But the decision belongs to the city manager or to the appointing authority. So, in this instance, what's likely to happen, unless everything proceeds extremely quickly, is that a hearing officer that you chose is going to make recommendations to an appointing office, some other appointing officer who had nothing to do with appointing the hearing officer. I guess that's the, I guess I maybe wouldn't even have this on, or, well, maybe I would just to find out why we're going outside. But aside from that, it wouldn't bother me at all if you were going to be here, but you're not going to be here. And so, why wouldn't it be better for the next appointing authority to also choose their own hearing officer, or have somebody that they maybe have confidence in? And not to say they won't have confidence in this one, they might want to go with this the same way you did, but maybe not.
Mr. Manager?
I don't know if I really have a response for you on that, Counselor. I continue to try to serve as, I did the budget, I'm trying to continue to serve as city manager right up to the last day, as I'm entrusted to do. And I felt that that was something that happened on my watch. I wanted to get the ball rolling on my watch. I felt I had that responsibility. Very frankly, I would have preferred to hear the case myself, but that wouldn't have been fair to the individuals involved. So I felt that this made the most sense. And hiring one of the best law firms, one of the best, and I don't know if it's been $100,000. That seems a little high, but that could be it, over 7 or 8 years.
Well, it's over several
But,
years. It's
yeah,
not, right?
It's not a lot of money. I mean, we had them come in and do a number of other projects for us here. They did work. Actually, they've done work for the school department on some labor negotiations. They've done work for, they did the report for us on the Starclosa School. They've been drawn upon for special council reasons, purposes. But I felt that was in the best interest of the city, and that's what I was looking out for, is the best interest of the city in this case.
All set, Councilor? Councilor Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand and appreciate Councilor Kennedy's motion, but just from reading articles in the newspaper, I was led to believe that the attorney representing the police officers wanted this slowed down, and that they would have preferred that a hearing officer was appointed by the city manager, which you did do. And talking to some attorneys in the city, this attorney does have quite a resume, as you indicated. But it's also my understanding that the next city manager could appoint another hearing officer, and not necessarily wanting to stop the process or slow the process down, but he or she would have every right as the appointing authority to appoint another hearing officer in the event that, for some reason, this person who's been appointed by Manager Lynch is not retained by the next city manager. So, again, I thought it was in keeping with what the attorney representing the police officers wanted to see happen. Thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify, I'm sorry, Councilor Belanger.
Mr. Mayor. Councilor Kennedy, I would like to reiterate, too, that I do appreciate the motion, and I also appreciate the manager, doing his due diligence up until the day he departs, literally. But, we got a very serious and sensitive matter here facing the city. It's a very unfortunate incident, and we all know that reprimands and changes are in order. There's no two ways about it. I do like the idea of an independent hearing officer, someone who's unfamiliar with the case, will be very impartial, so I do like your thinking on that. But I just don't see the immediate rush here. We got officers here who have clean records to this point, and I may add, been cleared from the DA's office of any criminal charges, and I believe should have ample time to gather up the best defense. So I don't believe there's an immediate rush on this. We all want answers, we want changes, and reprimands, most certainly. But I'd like a little time so that both sides can gather up all the information and facts to the best of their defense. So I just would like to see it, Mr. Manager, wait till your successor comes in. It's something they're going to have to deal with firsthand from this point on. Again, I appreciate your efforts and your work on this, but I feel that it should be delayed until the new administration comes in and deals with it the way they want to deal with it. Thank you.
Madam Solicitor, did you have something
Sure.
to add?
Just by way of a quick update, the parties actually are meeting this week with the hearing officer for the purposes of a scheduling conference. And so at that time, the hearing officer will hear from all of the parties involved, any arguments as to the time that's needed to prepare, documents that are that perhaps are needed that have not yet been exchanged, and other such matters. And then following that, presumably whatever the date that is agreed to by the parties to set, and whatever the parameters of the hearing are, will presumably commence.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next motion of the night by Councilor Rourke. Request city manager have Lowell Fire Department review possible use of Narcan as part of their operating procedures. Second by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reason for putting this motion on for the manager to have the fire department review the possible use of Narcan either through council meeting or a subcommittee, maybe public safety. Narcan is a drug that reverses the effects of an opioid overdose. In other words, heroin, painkillers such as OxyContin, and so forth. The city of Lowell has averaged 20 deaths a year over the past 7 years. With my professional job, I do see it, and unfortunately, I see it in my personal life as well. The state police just released a article yesterday. For the past 4 months, 185 overdoses that resulted in death have happened. And it didn't include the states, 3 largest states of Boston, Springfield, and Worcester. So the number, I'm sure, is much, much higher. And in light of the recent surge of heroin overdoses, the availability of Narcan has become critical and actually vital. It's a resource our fire department, being most of the time the first responders onto a scene, I think could utilize. While the epidemic of substance abuse and addiction is, needs to be confronted and combated with all available resources, my goal with Narcan would give our firefighters the opportunity, hopefully, to save a life rather than, counting another casualty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an excellent motion because unless you deal with this issue, which I do, and Councilor Rourke deals with this issue each and every day in the Sheriff's Department, it is a very important issue. Nobody likes to see anyone on drugs, but the fact remains they are. And they are human beings just the same, and there are times when they're so close to death that this one thing called Narcan can reverse that. It's an antidote that can reverse and save their life. I know some time ago I made a motion and I asked if the fire department carries EpiPen, and the answer was no, they don't. A simple EpiPen, and they don't carry it in the fire department, could bring somebody's back to life. Someone can die if they had a peanut allergy or a particular allergy to, and this is a similar situation where this simple ingredients of an antidote can save somebody's life. So I don't know why we talk about public safety, and yet the fire department, the police department, ambulances, I don't know why they don't carry between Narcan and, I know there's an expiration date, I know it's expensive, but if it were your child or your parent, the price wouldn't matter. You would want the antidote available. So it's just mind-boggling to me that we don't have the possibility of saving a life by having this available. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The issue of Narcan is one that our Board of Health our Health Department has been right out front on this particular issue. And we had a meeting just yesterday of the Youth Development Collaborative where we just had a discussion of the Narcan issue. We had the district attorney there as well as members of the police department. There's some issues at the State Department of Public Health and who they're authorizing to use Narcan, and it is something we'd like to see utilized here in the city. In fact, the fire unions now have accepted it as my understanding is they've accepted it as that doesn't need any further negotiation under their contracts, from what I heard yesterday. But there are some issues with the rollout of this. There are certain communities that are doing some things that venturing into this area, and we're very interested in doing that. In fact, it's a topic for the next youth development meeting next month to start talking about this. So I think you're going to hear more and more of this. I think it's a good motion. You're going to hear more and more about this over the course of the next month or two.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Next motion of the night by Councilor Mercier, request Mayor's Office notify and invite Sean Harmon, the artist, and all others responsible for the tremendous transformation of the City Council chamber to one of our meetings to be recognized for a job well done. Seconded by
Second.
the entire council. Council Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I could say the motion speaks for itself, but I don't want to say that because some time ago with our city manager who promised that he would not only have heat in the building in the winter, but he has air conditioning here in the summer, and I thought this had to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. Not only do we have these amenities, but Councilor Leahy made a motion that transformed this dilapidated, dreary chamber into, I almost feel like I'm in a palace because we have drapes here. We have a city motto on the carpeting from Tom Durkin. I am just amazed by the 12 paintings that we have on the wall from local artists. And I might say this because it's the truth. Sometimes I wander over to my eyes glaring at this side of the room, and I'm telling you a secret that I shouldn't say. My mind wanders into the artwork so that whatever you're saying, I have no idea what you just said. But it's
I saw you do that during the
Yeah.
budget presentation.
Counselor, I do the same thing.
It's just amazing. I am just, to see Bill Jarvis's federal building with that hazel-like purple tint to it, with the Lowell Memorial Auditorium in the back, my mind is in there. The detail is just, I'm just transformed into that painting, and I can't even compose myself, but I just think that sometimes we send a letter and say thank you. That's not enough this time. I think that they should come to the podium so that we can physically recognize them, because people are watching at home, and I'm sure they'd like to meet these people by way of the television. And I am just so grateful for this beautiful transformation. I can't even begin to tell you that They should be here and recognized and say thank you personally. And thank you to you, Mr. Manager. Every time the heat goes on, we didn't have to have a coat on this winter. This was amazing. It's might not be a big deal, but it's a big deal to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Leahy?
Thank you. This is a good motion, and we were thinking that, we should have maybe a little reception before the meeting, and then we can introduce them. And, when I asked Mr. Harmon for his help on this project after the council approved the motion and the administration said that, we could go forward with it, Mr. Harmon really jumped in and, you can see the results. And I would like to add one little thing that I think the governor is spending about $9 million to do his suite over, so I figured by my calculations, we saved about $8,975,000. So you're to be commended, Mr. Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, it's probably worthwhile pointing out that although you thought the bond rating was a big deal, it's heat and AC that's a big deal.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Belanger?
I just want to say that I think a few new councils helped out the scenery too, Mr. Mayor, so I think, thank you.
Duly noted. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Harmon calls the office regularly, and just to let members know, he's still putting together the final touches on 2 plaques that are forthcoming. Excuse me. Next motion of the night by Council Leahy. Request city manager have proper department re-examine the pedestrian crossing lights at the corner of Dutton and Market Streets. Seconded by Council Martin. Council Leahy?
Thank you. I know we've talked about this issue before, but we really need to have somebody come in from I think it's a state traffic light situation.
I think that one's a local on that one.
Oh, was local? All right. The intentions are that we cross with the lights, but it really isn't working at that intersection. There's just too many people taking a left on green, right on red, and that is a heavily pedestrian-used intersection, so I think we should take another look at it. Because people are telling me that, they're trying to cross the street and they're getting beeped at, run over, and sworn at. So we need to take another look at that and probably put in a pedestrian crosswalk, pedestrian light. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next motion by Councilor Milonazo. Request city manager provide a report on the use of the receivership program to combat abandoned properties in the city of Lowell. Seconded by Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next motion of the night by Councilor Martin. Request City Council seek appointments and vote to appoint remaining members to the LTC Board. Seconded by Councilor Samaras. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As chair of the Technology Subcommittee, I serve on the LTC Board, and we have appointments that the council nominates, and they serve for 2-year terms. In December or late November, LTC wrote to the mayor and requested through their nominating committee process that 4 people be reappointed to the board. The council voted that in December. I was under the impression that we had 6 appointees. I guess the board has been reduced in size and we get a percentage. And so I'm not quite sure what the number is, but I think even LTC agrees that we should have a 5th appointee. So that's the reason for my motion to make that 5th appointee. I know that John McDonough has expressed interest to me about being that appointee. He did serve on the board last term, and I think the executive director of LTC sent a letter to the mayor's office about that. So I don't know what the council's wishes are, if we want to wait for that letter, if we want to make the appointment, or if we want to seek other interested parties. I can tell you, by way of history, because I've been on this a few times, it is sometimes difficult to get people to serve. We have requests, in the past, we have requested people come forward. They've expressed interest, we've appointed them, they go to 1 or 2 meetings, and then that's it. So, but the 4 people we appointed in December were at the request of the nominating committee, and they've been very diligent about attendance and contributing to the organization. So, but I think we have one more appointee. I don't know that action needs to be taken tonight. We can wait for the letter if you want to put it in the packets for next week, and perhaps take it up then.
I haven't seen the letter yet, Counselor, but as soon as it comes in, we'll,
I thought I saw it by email, but I might have it wrong, but
Okay.
I'll double check on that.
we'll get it in, in the packets. What's the wish of the body? Do we want to move on the appointment? Counsel Leahy?
Sure, I wouldn't mind moving on that.
Okay. Motion to approve the appointment of John McDonough to the Lowell Telecommunications Board by Counsel Leahy, seconded by Counsel Belanger. Discussion on the motion?
Can I tell him in the morning? I'm going to see him at 6.
You're the first one. First one to do so. So I guess that would be an amendment to the motion, actually, to Counsel Martin's motion. So I guess motion to amend by Counsel Leahy, seconded by Counsel Belanger to appoint Mr. McDonough to the board. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll get that letter out as soon as we see it as well. Next item on the agenda, item 9-9 by Council Martin. Request City Council acknowledge contributions of Bernie Lynch as city manager. Second by Council Milonazo. Council Martin.
If there's no objection, I'd prefer if we could delay this to the last item of the
No objection.
meeting.
No objection at all whatsoever. Motion to delay this item till the last, well, why don't we just withdraw the motion? No objection, Council Milonazo, motion withdrawn. Council Lee, could you come take the chair, please, for the next 3 items?
Next motion of the night by Mayor Elliott. Request city manager contact railroad company regarding compliance issues with idling trains in South Lowell. Seconded by Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. The motion does speak for itself, and it's one of the most challenging issues I'm sure we've faced, those of us that have been on the council for quite some time, with idling trains in South Lowell. So my office got calls that the trains are continuously idling 24/7. I know it's a difficult company to deal with. It's a federal regulation. In fact, a number of years ago, we actually had a subcommittee set up to try to leverage what leverage the city has with the railroad company. There are pretty strict stipulations on how long they can idle, how long they can stay there, what they can carry. So I get calls from people in South Lowell. They asked me to bring this forward, Mr. Manager, to see if we can work with, it's Pan Am, it was Guilford, Pan Am Railroad now, if we have to send a letter or perhaps reach out to our congressional delegation to get them to move. I know there was major problems in Westford, same company, so that's the essence of the motion. I don't want to belabor it because we're all aware of it, but the people in South Lowell continue to have to try to contend with this.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, I've received the same phone calls. We sent a letter out last week, in fact, to Guilford, and it has been a long-standing problem. It goes back. I had the same problem when I was in Chelmsford as manager there. And with, I know Lowell was having problems. Westford, the town of Ayer was having problems. We were all involved in a number of meetings back then, and there were some EPA issues that they were trying to go after, and there was all types of, the Attorney General's office was getting involved. It seems to have died down, but it does seem to be coming back. And you're right, it's a very vexing problem because they are regulated by the federal government, and they sort of shield themselves through that. But we've sent the letter, and I think there should be follow-up, as you say, with the Congresswoman's office, and perhaps even with our own delegation to see if there's some state issues that could be, some state enforcement actions that could be taken. So we'll do that.
Any further discussion?
No, thank you. I appreciate that, the people in South Lowell, even if the letter or whatever we can do to let them know that we're putting them on notice. I think that's the only way it works, so thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Say aye. All those opposed? Next motion by Mayor Elliott. Request the city manager provide police reports regarding cell block incident. Seconded by Council O'Rourke.
Thank you. We hadn't seen this report. I know it was in the news, Mr. Manager. It was in the newspaper and Channel 5, and council still hasn't seen a copy of that report. Is it not public? Is it not public knowledge? Is it not a public document?
I'm going to have the solicitor.
I mean, I know there's many potential issues, but if the press has it, I don't know why we.
Yeah, sure. The report is a public report, and I'm sure that was just a sort of an oversight in not providing then the council with a copy of it. So we can electronically send a copy out, and if anybody wants a hard copy, just email us back, and we'll have a hard copy for you in your packet.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Next motion of the night by Mayor Elliott. Request the city manager provide update regarding service zone plan and refer to the Public Safety Subcommittee for discussion. Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I didn't know anything about this service plan, Mr. Manager, until it was brought to our attention last week, at last week's meeting by Councilor Kennedy's motion by Mr. Daly. And I've now learned that the plan outlines the emergency medical services resources in a municipality and highlights how those resources are to be coordinated and used. Communities are supposed to have their plans in place and approved by the state by 2006, yet we don't have an approved plan. The information from the state provided to the council, it indicates that municipal executives are the ones responsible for making sure it gets approved, and it's not the Board of Health, right? So I'm curious why in 2014 the city doesn't have a plan in place that essentially ensures that there are no lapses in coverage and times, and so why does the city still not have one in place, and what is being done about it?
Mr. Manager?
I don't think we're alone in this. There are a number of other communities that are in similar positions that, but essentially this is a plan that the state put in place or required going back a number of years. And there are a number of plans that the state requires that we have on file. In this particular case, it's been almost like the railroad issue. It's been sort of a vexing issue that I've had numerous meetings with the fire department. The fire department is one that's responsible for putting this together. I've entrusted them to do that. And they have encountered roadblocks or issues. I shouldn't say roadblocks. They've encountered issues along the way that they've brought to my attention, and they've tried to work through. They've submitted. They've gotten comments. They've submitted again and gotten more comments. The presence of the university here with their own emergency medical services caused some issues at one point in time. Essentially, though, it's been in the hands of the fire department to get done, and I've had several meetings to push them along to wrap it up and get it done. They finally did get it in, but the state identified some additional issues. There's a meeting actually scheduled for later this month to hopefully wrap this up. It's been something that's, I agree, it's been hanging out there, and perhaps should have been pushed more in the grand number of projects and initiatives that we've had. It's been one that's just been constantly, a work in progress. But hopefully that will be done soon, and we'll have a report to the Public Safety Subcommittee. I'll have the Fire Department come in and the Board of Health come in. They're both involved in this process. The Police Department is involved, the ambulances, the hospitals, the universities involved in this, a number of different players involved. So we will get that. It appears that there's light at the end of the tunnel finally. But it's a disappointment to me that it hasn't been done as well.
So the Board of Health is responsible for, well, I guess the Board of Health and the Fire Department. Why hasn't the Board of Health put, forth their part of their responsibility? I mean, it's, I can understand your frustration, but this is public safety. This is where, ambulances being placed in strategic locations with backup, all of these plans, where these ambulances are. I mean, we're talking minutes that saves lives.
Right.
Where was the lapse?
I'd say that, I really don't want to be in a position where I'm pointing fingers, certainly publicly. I think that the health department has been doing their part of it. I think that, but it's been really getting the work done on the plan and getting it filed.
I thought the chief's, the letter from the chief of the fire chief indicated that he was, he's been on this. He wants to get this, plan approved. He's been, it's been a priority.
Again, I understand him saying that, but at this point in time, it's really been in the fire department's hands to get it done, and it hasn't been completed.
Okay. Well, I appreciate getting that information, as you said, to the Public Safety Subcommittee, and which is so we can make sure we know what the city has to do to be in compliance with that state requirement. So
it's really, again, it's a valuable plan. I think the value of it, though, is more in the process than it is in the plan. Like many things, it's the process of getting people to have the dialogue about the issues. One of the issues, for instance, that was sent back to us was that it was not going to be, that the ambulance companies had not been provided an opportunity to be involved with that.
Okay.
So.
Well, I guess it's a state requirement, which is, it's a requirement that the state, that we submit this plan and that be approved by the state. So I think that's the paramount importance, that the city is required to do it. So thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Mayor Elliott?
Going back to item 9-9, motion by Councilor Martin. Request City Council acknowledge contributions of Bernie Lynch as city manager. Second by Councilor Milonazo. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there were some people that wanted to speak on this. I don't know if they're registered or not, but
Some registered counselor. Anne Marie Page, I don't think she's here anymore. And there's a Patrick and Amy Farmer.
Good evening. My name is Amy Farmer, Saber Farmer, and I live at 84 Vernon Street in Lowell. Mr. Lynch, I would just like to thank you for your service to the city of Lowell. In the past several years, we have seen a huge positive change in the city's financial situation. I believe we mainly have you to thank, as well as, the initial positivity that we had. Perhaps it is just your manner, but you really brought professionalism to this position and set Lowell on a positive path for the future. As residents with children, who use all of the features that the city has to offer, we really appreciate that. I would like to thank you again for all you have done for the city of Lowell and wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
How you doing? Patrick Farmer. I'm actually the president of the Centerville Neighborhood Action Group. On behalf of the group, I want to thank you for working with us over the years. We've had a lot of positive input with you in the city council, and with the combined efforts, the neighborhood completely different than it was many years ago, and obviously, going forward, same thing. We want to wish you the best, and thank you for all your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a letter from Jessica Wilson who said she wouldn't be able to attend from the LTC Corporation.
Right.
Council Martin?
So, yeah, Anne Marie Page had given me a letter. She was sick this evening, asked me to read it. It's pretty short if there's no objection. So,
Objection.
I just say, I wish to thank City Manager Bernie Lynch for all his hard work for the benefit of the city of Lowell. We may not always see eye to eye in this city, but we try to work together for the benefit of the city. We know the city manager's job is not a popularity contest. He was hired to be a manager. That is what he did. This is not a 40-hour-a-week job. He put together a good team. Tom Moses, Adam Bakey, and Cheryl Wright. They also left us in better shape than when they arrived. Their leaving is a great loss, and we thank them also for their hard work. Mr. Lynch always had an open-door policy with the neighborhood leaders. As with all citizens, we wish him well for his future. And so on the motion, I really just wanted to say things that are very similar, Mr. Manager. I think that's all of our goals when we're either elected or appointed to these positions of responsibility. You want to leave the city, I think, in a better place when you leave than when you arrived. And I think you can, you've made the case even tonight in the budget as to why that's the case. And certainly we've had some great improvements under your watch. So I don't want to belabor things, but I would like to highlight a few of them. Certainly, most people, when they speak complimentary about you, talk about the budget and financial acumen and management. But I think sometimes what's overlooked is the difficult decisions that reach those budgets. You don't just become good at math and be able to do a budget. There are policy things built into the budget, things like the health insurance, improvements that we've made, things like the sick leave buyback that you mentioned earlier tonight. So those are sometimes difficult negotiations. Sometimes those are difficult votes for us. But at least the financial votes that you've presented to the council have resulted in the city being in a much stronger financial position. So I certainly want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge the contributions in the JAM plan. That's been an important project for the city, one of the most important projects really in my lifetime here. I think it's off to a very good start with the developer that was selected. I think they made the right choice about which project to do first. I think they've made very good progress given the economic environment that we've been in since 2008. I think the fact that you settled the litigation over the land takings is a very big plus for the future of that project. I think the neighborhood and housing initiatives that we've had ongoing are very good, and Ms. Page speaks for all the neighborhood groups, and I think that her statement is testament to that. I appreciate the efficiency that you brought to city operations. You mentioned just last week the DPW equipment that we've purchased at some expense, but is saving money operationally and things like that. We appreciate things like the energy contract that brought Councilor Mercier the heat and air conditioning that we all appreciate, and even things like the energy initiative for the citizens. So things that we've brought to government operations. At least in this year, we've actually brought to the citizenry so they experience some of those same savings in their own electric bills. So we haven't always agreed on anything. We didn't agree on the trash in the beginning, and I know, we've all had pluses and minuses, but I think you should be proud of your tenure here. I think the city's in a very good place right now. I think we have a lot of opportunity ahead of us, and part of that is because of your good work here. So thank you for your service. Good luck in your future endeavors, and would welcome you back here whenever you care to come.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. There is a member of the public that would like to speak. If there's no objection, motion to suspend the rules by Councilor Samaras, seconded by Councilor Rourke. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Could you just please state your name and address for the
Hi,
record?
I'm Francie Slater. I live at 200 Liberty Street. Thank you all for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a resident of the City of Lowell and as a community organizer in the City of Lowell, and I want to thank the manager for all the work he's done to support neighborhood growth, and especially your Neighborhood Impact Initiative has been amazing at allowing neighborhoods to have some empowerment to make changes within the neighborhood, reflecting neighborhood values and reflecting neighborhood character. And we're so grateful for that across the city and the neighborhoods that we work in. And I hope that that program is something that can continue into the future. We've seen such great results from the Impact Initiative, from the streets and roads, but also in the parks, storefronts, and across the whole character of the neighborhoods. And so I really appreciate your focusing on that aspect of the city development. It's very important as you leave the downtown and the business community to pay tribute to the residents here. So I appreciate it, and thank you very much for all your service, and wish you the best.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Milanazzo?
Thank you,
Councilor
Mr.
Samaras?
Mayor. If I could, I just want to really repeat some of what Councilor Martin said, in that you have done an outstanding job as city manager. I've had the great privilege to work with you for the last few years, and you are leaving Lowell a better place than when you did come. I also want to, on behalf of the business community, because you and I serve on the Lowell Plan Board and the Lowell Development and Financial Corporation Board of Directors as well, and over the last 7.5 years, you have been a very big supporter of both of those organizations, and the revitalization that's gone on in the city, despite the downturn in the economy, has really been because we've been able to maintain this public-private partnership. And you, during your tenure as city manager, you've walked the walk. You've met with the business community on a regular basis. Obviously, you've met with the neighborhood groups on a regular basis. And I just want to congratulate you on a job well done. And we are going to miss you here, and we want to wish you the very, very best as you move on. We hope you stay involved now that you're living in the city of Lowell. I hope you stay involved in the city, but I just want to say that because of your professionalism and the team that you brought forward, plus the councils that you've worked with, the city council that you've worked with, we've been able to maintain Lowell moving forward, and I just want to thank you for your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Samaras.
Yes, I too, as a new member of the city council, want to thank the city manager for all the work that you've done. When I think of some of the projects I was just, that I would actually read about, or when I was position of high school headmaster, was part of some of those programs, and what you did with the Hamilton Canal project, the Lowell Community Health Center, the completion of the Boot Mills, Jean d'Arc, the corporate tower, Lowell General Hospital, its expansion, the work that you've done with the university, and of course the neighborhoods, because as the candidate walking the streets, many times I was asked if I would support your initiatives, and I was really pleased, and I was looking forward to working with you. Of course, my first meeting, you decided to retire, so I have to think about that. But you truly have put Lowell in a better place, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to run. I wanted to be part of the excitement that was going on in Lowell and what you've generated, because I truly feel that Lowell's on the edge of becoming one of the best mid-sized cities in the country. And because you have left the city, or are leaving the city financially sound, I believe that this city council and the next city manager will be able to take this city to the next level. And you can't do that if you don't have a base. And we have more than a base. This is an exciting place to be. Thank you for that work.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. Council Rourke and Council Leahy.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, I didn't have too long opportunity to work with you, but, congratulations and best luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Council Leahy and Council
Thank you.
Belanger.
Thank you. I too wanted to just say thank you. I won't go over all your accomplishments, but they're worthy. I first probably met you in the early 80s when you were my professor over at Lowell. Then our paths crossed on the school committee, and I must say, you did a lot of work with the schools. You definitely showed up for the negotiations, and there's a lot of long nights there, so we appreciate your efforts with that and everything you did with the school side. Now I work with you on the city side, and I appreciate it. I have a good understanding of what you do every day, and it's not an easy job. And most notably with the budget, but you did reach out to the neighborhood groups. You empowered them, you let them help you, and you worked well with them. So we thank you for that. And we wish you well, and we wish you well in your new marriage, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to you, Mr. Manager, I too want to thank you for all your accomplishments. For starters, on a personal level, you appointed me to the Board of Appeals twice over your tenure, and I appreciate your confidence. I appreciate that very much. Being here tonight may have not been a possibility without your confidence and your trust. So thank you very much. I mean that sincerely, and I want to thank you for your dedication, your accomplishments in the city. Not to be repetitive, but that my colleagues have stated all your accomplishments. I know firsthand, being a lifelong resident, a businessman in the city, I know what you've accomplished under your tenure. You deserve full credit for that. And you've built a lot of foundations in the city, and I'm not just talking brick buildings, I mean policies as well. I believe you set a tone in municipalities across the Commonwealth and the nation that things need to be run like a business. And that's what you did. And it may have been popular at times with people, but you did what you had to do. The federal government can print up money it doesn't have, but cities and towns cannot. So you were very, very disciplined in your budgeting, and as you exit, we are now in good financial shape for the new manager that comes in place and this council to work with. So once again, thank you very much, but I have a gift for you. For all your tenure here in Lowell, I have an elect Corey Belanger pen that are in over 3,000 households in the city of Lowell. I'd like to present one to you after the meeting as a memoir here for your service in the city of Lowell, Mr. Manager. Thank you very much.
Councilor, I will treasure it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, with all these comments, it must seem like just another Tuesday night to you.
Right.
I'd just like to say that I've only served on this council during the latter part of your tenure, but I do think that probably you will be remembered as time goes on as the manager that did provide the city with a sound fiscal footing, and it shouldn't be lost that that was during the recession, which made it be exceptionally difficult to do. And I think that everybody in the city appreciates that a lot. I think everybody on the city council appreciates that. And I think that although we didn't agree all of the time on everything, I think that we were never, it was never in a disagreeable way. And so I just appreciated the time that we served together, and I wish you all the best in whatever you do in the future.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. If there's no objection, I'd just like to make a few comments from the podium. So, Mr. Manager, I wish you well, and I also thank you for your service to the city. We clearly have had healthy discussions, healthy debate on many issue, particularly fiscal in nature. You once remarked that maybe we should take this show on the road. Maybe we can do that. Maybe not.
I'll wait for you.
But on a serious note, I do think that discussion, healthy discussion, makes better policy. It challenges us to make good decisions and to think outside of the box. But I do think the budget and the financial nature that you presented in that document clearly is something you should be congratulated on, and it's the budget's a much better document than you certainly when you came in, and it improved year after year. So I do commend you on that, and I do wish you well in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager?
If I may, and I don't have a PowerPoint, but I want to thank the council for their comments and the members of the public for their comments. And I am, as I leave, this will be my last meeting of the council. I am very proud of my time here in the city of Lowell. I think that we've had some great results, and I want to stress it's the we, and I'll come back to that in a second. But I do think that we've made tremendous strides with the finances. When I look at where we were before and where we are now in terms of our finances, we're far better off. Certainly the bond rating is evidence of that. The fact that we have some fiscal flexibility, the fact that we've been able to invest in the infrastructure of the city. I certainly appreciate all of the comments about the finances because I do think that that's really the core of getting things done and giving us the opportunities. But the finances really are just a tool that allows us to invest in the city and the services and the infrastructure that will serve the generations to come. The finances really are what guides us in terms of economic development. I think we've done very well in terms of economic development. Certainly the JAM plan, the Hamilton Canal District. Councilor Samaras mentioned a number of the big projects that we've done that we've been cooperative on, working with the businesses. I think the relationship that we've had with the business community has been very good. I can't say that every business in the community, particularly the smaller businesses, necessarily feel they sometimes feel put upon by the costs that they encounter and all, but through it all, I think we've really worked hard to help businesses, whether it be through our best practices program, through the retail practices program, the services we provide, the neighborhood initiative that's tried to help businesses out in the neighborhoods. Certainly the larger projects coming in that produce jobs and bring people into the city, I think is very important. The fact that we've done so much in making a more efficient city government. I also think that what we've tried to do is make the city government more accountable. And I've been very, very pleased with the emails and the correspondence I've received from a number of residents expressing appreciation for all of those other things, but particularly for the fact that they feel that when they come to city government, they're treated well. They're treated based on the fact that they're a resident of the city, and that it's not, or someone coming to visit the city, and it isn't necessarily who you know, it's the fact that everyone's treated the same and they're treated well, and they've indicated that that's a change, and I'm pleased that that's happened, because I think there has been a change in the organizational culture here, as we've tried to empower the employees as well, the employees and the department heads, to try to achieve excellence in what we do. And we're very, very fortunate here in the city to have a tremendous group of employees and a tremendous group of department heads. I often would tell the department heads when I met with them that is on my worst day, which, by the way, were usually a Wednesday morning after a Tuesday night meeting, I would go in and I'd meet with the department heads, and I'd be depressed and frustrated, and they would go around the room and tell me all the projects that they're working on, and it would reinvigorate me because of the good work that they were doing to make the city of Lowell a better place. So certainly the employees and the department heads that care about the city so much really are the contributors that make it all possible. The collaboration that we've done with the institutions, certainly the university, I had a rocky start with the chancellor, with the arena, but the relationship, the partnership that we've built up with the university, with regular meetings and really planning efforts. The neighborhood groups, I made that a commitment when I first came on as city manager that we would work with the neighborhood groups, beginning with Centerville. We went out and We met with them on a regular basis, not only myself, but Mr. Marchand, Mr. Damaris, other members of the staff, to talk about what was going on in the city, and not only talk to them, but talk with them about what needed to go on. And certainly the Neighborhood Initiative was a big part of that. But the other organizations that we've met with and worked with, the regional entities like the Middlesex 3 Group, the Merrimack Valley Economic Development Council, the area communities on intermunicipal agreements and the like, the business community with the Lowell Plan, working with the health organizations through the Greater Lowell Health Alliance, the work that we did with the Lowell Youth Development Collaborative on gang violence, but beyond that, what we could do to help the youth. Our partnerships with UTEC and Boys and Girls Club and all of the others that are all part of the community. And that collaboration, I think, is something I'm very proud of. What we're hoping to build through all of that, and what I was hoping to do as city manager and all of that, was to build a sense of community. Lowell is a great city. Every city can become a better community, and hopefully that ran through as we tried to be more accountable to our residents and tried to act like a business, but do it in a way that was humane and really based on that sense of community. I've had great support from the City Council on a number of initiatives, and I truly appreciate that, because that really is the key to the Plan E form of government, that the manager and the legislative body work together. And that's what has made quite a bit of the successes possible. And at the end of the day, I'm very fortunate. I hear horror stories from managers in other communities that, they encounter the public and there's the fur flies. I can tell you, as I walk the streets of the city, and go into the neighborhoods and around the downtown, the response I get is always, well, not always, but close to always, very, very positive. I have one guy in the downtown who really doesn't like me, but that's another story. But no, the people of the city who've come up to me since I announced my resignation and have, expressed appreciation for what we've been able to accomplish, it has really been heartwarming to me. And I love the city of Lowell. I told the story when I first became city manager, or applied to be city manager, that I fell in love with the city back in the 70s at its lowest point, because it was able to turn itself around. And for me now to close out my career as city manager is really something that means a lot to me. And I appreciate the opportunity that I had to have this position, and I appreciate the support I've had. And to go back to the we, it really has been a we. I've sort of just been along for the ride in my mind, because I've just had great people here in the city council, the department heads, the employees that have made it all possible. So I will stop there and thank everyone for that.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. No further business before the City Council. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Martin. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.